In a dimly lit studio, a tireless artist remains hunched over her desk, pouring her soul into every stroke of the digital pen. A sharp chime from her phone breaks the silence, revealing a notification at the stroke of midnight. Zhang Qinlin finally pauses, her eyes reflecting the immense strain of countless sleepless nights spent chasing deadlines. Her friend watches from the doorway with a look of deep concern, urging the stubborn creator to finally take a break. Qinlin manages a weak, apologetic smile, admitting that she has pushed her health to the absolute limit. The atmosphere shifts instantly as her friend's expression pales in shock at what she sees. A thin trail of blood begins to leak from the corner of Qinlin's mouth, a grim sign of her body's collapse. She falls into a violent coughing fit, her hand coming away stained with a terrifying shade of red. Her friend rushes forward to support her, frantically calling for medical help as Qinlin's strength rapidly fades. The light in her eyes begins to flicker out, the world around her dissolving into a hazy, dark blur. She collapses onto the floor, her life slipping away amidst the scattered pages of her own creation. Under a clear sky, the grand architecture of the Morwen ducal mansion stands tall as a bird chirps in the autumn trees. A young girl with shimmering silver hair suddenly jolts awake, her gaze darting around the unfamiliar luxury of the room. As her mind clears, she feels an overwhelming sense of displacement, as if her soul doesn't belong in this body. She sits up in the massive, ornate bed, her heart racing as she tries to process her impossible situation. Hearing a voice, she turns to see a profile of herself that looks far more elegant than anything she remembers. A handsome, bespectacled attendant greets her, with a calm and perfectly professional demeanor. The girl gasps in shock, recoiling as the reality of her new life begins to set in. A desperate scream echoes from the mansion's windows, startling the wildlife on the estate. Deep in thought, she begins to piece together the fragments of her memory to understand what happened. She realizes with horror that her soul has been transplanted into the body of a character she once drew. The truth is undeniable. She has been reincarnated as the primary villainess from her very own manga series. She recalls the internal logic of her story, where every hero needs a powerful evil to overcome. That evil was Emi Morwen, a high-status noblewoman known for her deceptive and cold-hearted nature. Visualizing the adult version of her character, she sees a woman of immense beauty and even greater cruelty. The original Emi was a monster who would commit any sin necessary to satisfy her selfish desires. The author remembers the tragic end she wrote, envisioning the villainess trapped in the chains of her own making. Destined for madness and a lonely death, Emi's original path was one of total destruction. Realizing she's now in control, Qinlin decides her only hope for survival is to completely abandon the original script. She puts on a bewildered expression, asking the man in front of her for his identity with fake innocence. Diane, her loyal attendant, instantly panics at the thought that his mistress no longer recognizes him. She doubles down on the act, maintaining her cute and confused facade to keep the staff off balance. Outside, the bird remains perched on the branch as the panicked shouting continues to erupt from the mansion. Diane is moved to tears by his lady's sudden gentleness, prompting Emi to awkwardly comfort him. The attendant quickly regains his professional composure, remembering his long-standing role as the villainess's personal aide. As Diane meticulously brushes her silver hair, Emi feels a strange sense of surrealism being served by a character she designed. Though she has successfully deceived her attendant, she knows a much larger challenge is waiting just around the corner. The scene shifts to the sprawling library of the Morwen mansion, a room overflowing with knowledge and secrets. Diane delivers the startling news to a young boy, explaining that Lady Emi appears to have lost her memory. Emi stands by nervously, her internal anxiety peaking as she prepares to face another person from her past life. Sitting at the desk, the young boy freezes in absolute shock, his mind struggling to process the devastating news. He suddenly lunges from his seat with an explosion of energy, catching the tiny Emi completely off guard. Without a word, he pulls her into a tight, desperate embrace, his relief palpable in the silent room. He whispers his gratitude to the heavens, overwhelmed that his sister has finally returned to the waking world. With eyes glistening with unshed tears, he confesses his deepest fear that she might have left him forever. Emi's face turns a bright shade of crimson as she struggles to handle the sudden, intense physical affection. He holds her by the shoulders, his gaze so earnest and closed that Emi can barely find the words to respond. Outside, the peaceful atmosphere of the estate is shattered by Emi's internal scream of panic over their lack of personal space. Realizing his mistake, the boy offers a sheepish, charming smile and apologizes for his overeager behavior. Emi pouts in embarrassment, quietly reflecting on how easily she let her guard down. Diane interrupts the emotional reunion to ask what official report should be sent to the Duke. The boy gently cups Emi's face, deciding that their father doesn't need to be bothered as long as she is safe. For a fleeting moment, the two share a mutual gaze of admiration, both thinking the other is undeniably precious. Emi suddenly snaps back to reality, realizing she's being manipulated by his incredibly cute and innocent appearance. She quickly pulls her hand away, breaking the contact to re-establish her boundaries. The boy watches in confusion as Emi creates distance between them, unsure of why she is retreating. Both Diane and the young master look on with concern as Emi tries to hide her growing social anxiety. She hides her face behind her hands, desperately trying to figure out how to interact with this brother she doesn't know. Her mind races as she tries to recall his identity, terrified that her lack of recognition will expose her secret. A sudden bolt of realization strikes her as a hidden memory from her own writing finally surfaces. She remembers him now. Emi Morwen, the older twin brother who was little more than a background character in her original story. She envisions the Emi she wrote a tragic figure destined for a much darker and more serious fate. Her heart sinks as she remembers writing his death, having him assassinated by poison before his 12th birthday. Overwhelmed by a wave of creator's guilt, she can barely stand to look at the boy she sentenced to a premature end. Emi interprets her silence as rejection, looking heartbroken as he asks if she has truly forgotten her own brother. Emi cowers behind her attendant, her voice failing her as she struggles to form a coherent sentence. With her eyes spinning in a dizzying whirl of stress, she feels like a cornered animal with no way out. She shifts her weight to her toes, preparing her body for a quick and desperate escape from the awkward situation. Shouting a frantic and nonsensical excuse, she bolts from the room at full speed, leaving the boys in her dust. She concludes that while running away might be shameful, a strategic retreat is the only way to preserve her sanity. She pivots on her heels, her small shoes clicking against the floor as she prepares to make a break for it. Screaming a frantic excuse about having urgent business to attend to, she leaves the bewildered boys standing in a cloud of dust. She reasons that while fleeing might look cowardly, a strategic retreat is the only way to preserve her sanity for another day. Diane watches her departure with a mix of surprise and admiration, noting that his lady's physical reflexes are sharper than ever. Eli's voice cuts through the silence, his tone shifting from heartbreak to a sudden, chilling seriousness as he addresses the attendant. Clutching a stack of documents, the young master's expression darkens as he prepares for the imminent return of the Duke. Deep within the opulent halls of the Morwen mansion, the rhythmic sound of frantic footsteps echoes against the marble walls. Emi sprints through the corridor, her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and the sheer adrenaline of her escape. She internally scoffs at the situation, wondering if she's somehow slipped into a cliché romance story rather than her own dark tragedy. Her internal monologue is cut short when she slams headfirst into a firm, broad chest that feels like a solid brick wall. A breathtakingly handsome man with flowing silver hair looks down at her, his presence framed by an aura of ethereal roses. He immediately drops to one knee to check on her, his touch professional and steady as he ensures the young lady isn't injured. He offers a smile so radiant and detailed that it feels like the very art style of her world has been upgraded to a masterpiece. Emi stares back with a blank, dizzy expression, her brain short-circuiting at the sight of a character she doesn't recognize. Stealing her nerves, she points a small finger at the stranger and bluntly demands to know his identity. The man's perfect facade momentarily cracks, a sharp pang of shock visible in his eyes at being forgotten by his own family. He reaches out with a gloved hand, gently patting her head in a gesture of familiar, albeit strained, affection. Emi freezes in place, her instincts screaming as she detects a terrifying wave of murderous intent hidden behind his gentle touch. Maintaining his sharp, blindingly bright smile, the man introduces himself as Kenur, the eldest brother of the Morwen house. He stands tall and commanding, his polite demeanor masking a cold authority that demands immediate respect from everyone present. A pink-haired maid arrives on the scene, bowing deeply as she awaits the next set of instructions from her master. As Kenur orders a meeting with the rest of the household, Emi and Diane share a look of pure, unadulterated dread for what comes next. Diane remains perfectly still, his analytical gaze hidden behind the sharp sheen of his glasses. Ely watches the unfolding tension with a look of pure, youthful concern written across his face. A pair of icy red eyes narrows, radiating an authority that demands absolute silence in the room. Emi cowers in her seat, paralyzed by the terrifying wave of murderous intent coming from the man behind her. Her thoughts race in a panic as she tries to comprehend why this intimidating stranger just called her his daughter. She steals a nervous glance at him, her mind struggling to bridge the gap between her memories and this new reality. Before her sits Fyodor Morwen, the powerful duke whose cold beauty is as sharp and dangerous as a blade. Emi's internal monologue erupts into a frantic scream, realizing she completely forgot to include this crucial father figure in her original story. Ely lets out a heavy, weary sigh as the weight of the family's complicated situation settles over him. He looks down with a shadowed expression, his eyes reflecting a deep and hidden sense of internal conflict. He remains silent, his youthful features tightening as the gravity of the Duke's return becomes clear. A sharp, knowing look passes between Diane and the Duke, hinting at secrets shared only between a master and his most loyal servant. Ely focuses on the stack of documents in his hand, trying to ground himself amidst the growing emotional chaos. The Duke sits regally in his chair, his presence dominating the library, while the maid stands attentively by his side. Emi feels the weight of everyone's intense stares, making her feel small and exposed in the middle of the grand room. She puts on a blank, comical expression to hide her growing social anxiety from her intimidating family members. A haunting vision of her original character's tragic end serves as a grim reminder of the fate she is desperately trying to avoid. She maintains her neutral mask, even as her mind whirls with the impossible logic of this fantasy world. While the boys maintain their professional distance, The atmosphere in the room remains thick with unspoken questions. Emi looks up with wide, innocent eyes, hoping to find any possible way to escape this suffocating meeting. The Duke leans in with a look of intense, almost frightening concern for his daughter's sudden amnesia. The crushing silence of the room creates a level of stress that is almost too much for the young girl to bear. Tears of pure Emi internally cheers, hailing the maid as her absolute hero for this perfectly timed tactical rescue. As they reach the exit, the young miss offers a small, polite wave back to her bewildered brother and father. The maid wears a triumphant grin, clearly pleased with herself for outmaneuvering the highest-ranking men in the house. Ely and the Duke watch them go, their expressions softening into a rare moment of domestic peace. Under a clear blue sky filled with soaring birds, the clock tower of Kapur's second shopping district strikes a rhythmic tone. The camera pans down to the charming, timber-framed storefronts that line the bustling cobblestone streets. Baskets of fresh citrus fruits are displayed prominently, their vibrant colors and prices a testament to the thriving local economy. Emi stands in the center of the thoroughfare, her hand covering her mouth in pure disbelief as she witnesses her own drawings coming to life. She gazes down the picturesque lane, feeling less like a creator and more like a traveler exploring a beautiful foreign land. Her immersion is interrupted by Diane, who approaches with a warm smile and a bag full of freshly— This is Emi's very first request since her recovery. Ely freezes, the realization that he can't say no to his sister's rare wish hitting him with full force. Emi watches the intense exchange with a bead of sweat, wondering if these two are actually capable of behaving themselves. Ely eventually gives in, though he warns Diane with a terrifyingly serious expression that any unhappiness on Emi's part will result in his certain demise. Diane offers a confident thumbs up, undeterred by the threat as he prepares for their professional outing. Back in the present, the tall attendant stands protectively over the young miss, offering her a snack as they continue their walk. Emi takes a large, adorable bite of the pastry, quietly acknowledging that her attendant is actually quite handsome and reliable. As they move through the crowd, she finds his boundless enthusiasm for the local sights a bit overwhelming to keep up with. Diane's eyes light up with excitement as he spots the Halcyon Bakery, telling Emi to wait while he secures their famous new pastries. Left alone for a moment, Emi stands quietly with her bread, reflecting on how energetic her life has become. She pauses, her gaze softening as she takes a moment to truly appreciate the world around her. Looking up at the sun-drenched horizon, she realizes that the reality of this world is far more peaceful and beautiful than her original script. The tranquil atmosphere is suddenly shattered by a piercing scream that makes the young girl jump in surprise. Despite the sudden chaos, Emi continues to munch on her snack with wide, curious eyes, trying to spot the source of the commotion. Across the way, a haughty girl in an ornate green dress points a finger in a rage, screaming the word peasant at the top of her lungs. Emi jumps in shock as a piercing scream suddenly shatters the peaceful market atmosphere. Even with her cheeks stuffed full of pastry, she can't help but stare wide-eyed at the source of the commotion. A few paces away, a young noblewoman in a frilly green dress shrieks at a trembling boy, branding him an uncivilized peasant. The girl's face contorts with aristocratic fury as she looks down at the dust on her expensive silk skirts. Desperate to avoid a beating, the commoner boy drops to his knees and begs for her mercy while clutching her hem. The noblewoman recoils in pure disgust, demanding that the serf take his filthy hands off her immediately. With tears streaming down his face, the boy clings to the fabric, terrified that this minor mistake might cost him his life. Emi watches the drama unfold from a safe distance, wiping crumbs from her chin as she analyzes the bizarre scene. She quickly realizes the boy is actually being clever, using his pathetic appearance to manipulate the situation. Suddenly, she feels a sharp tug on her own clothing and looks down to see a small hand gripping her skirt. The boy has abandoned the green-clad girl to latch onto Emi, begging her to be his protector. Emi looks around in a panic, wondering why this kid chose a tiny child like her instead of the many adults nearby. He looks up at her with a face full of snot and tears, appearing more like a professional actor than a truly distressed orphan. The girl in green is left fuming, her face turning a deep shade of crimson as she is ignored by her target. Her sharp gaze shifts over to the silver-haired intruder, who has inadvertently stolen the spotlight. Emi tries to make a quiet exit, but the boy refuses to let go, dragging her right back into center of the conflict. She freezes mid-step as she feels the weight of a hostile, judging stare locking onto her position. The noble girl lets out a sharp click of her tongue, her eyes narrowing as she recognizes the supposed half-wit of the ducal household. Emi's red eyes flicker with a mix of annoyance and curiosity as she prepares to be addressed. She lets out a confused "huh?" as she tries to figure out how this stranger knows her identity. The girl sneers at Emi's modest attire, mockingly commenting that the shabby outfit perfectly suits a fallen noble. Emi doesn't miss a beat, pointing out that her simple clothes are far better than a dress that looks like a literal head of cabbage. An imaginary field of vegetables sprouts around the noble girl, driving the cabbage insult home with comedic timing. The noble girl explodes in a fit of rage, unable to believe she's being mocked by someone she considers a social failure. As the girl screams in frustration, the clever little boy uses the distraction to quietly vanish into the crowd. The girl forces herself to calm down, a wicked glint appearing in her eyes, as she prepares a more personal verbal attack. She reminds Emi of her old reputation as a lifeless doll who was once incapable of even holding a conversation. A vision of the original Emi's vacant, hollow expression flashes through her mind, highlighting her former tragic state. The girl leans in close, her voice dripping with venom as she tells Emi to crawl back home like a stray dog. Emi sighs internally, pegging this girl as a classic, low-level cannon fodder character designed only for minor annoyance. The girl blinks in confusion, frustrated that her insults aren't triggering the expected emotional breakdown. Emi closes her eyes in exasperation, realizing this brat is so arrogant she hasn't even bothered to ask who she's truly talking to. With a flourish of her hand, the girl proudly announces herself as Penny Bayard, the rising star of the social realm. Emi's mental gears begin to turn as she processes the family name Bayard and their actual standing in this world. The scene shifts to a mental classroom where the author prepares to deliver a quick lesson on political power. Teacher Kinlan explains the strict hierarchy of the nobility, noting that a viscount is several steps below a duke. A clear diagram illustrates that Emi, as a Morwen, sits at the top of the food chain compared to the lowly Bayard girl. Penny remains blissfully unaware of the math, looking incredibly smug about her superior status. Emi lets out a long, weary sigh, deciding it's time to teach this immature child a lesson in real authority. Her eyes take on a sharp, predatory glint, mirroring the cold intensity of her father, the Duke. She brings a hand to her face, her aura shifting from a cute child to a terrifyingly composed villainess. The air around them grows heavy as Emi prepares to show her what it truly means to hold power in this world. She looms over the smaller girl, her shadow casting a dark and intimidating shroud over the cobblestones. With a voice as cold as ice, Emi asks Penny if she is truly prepared to face the consequences of insulting her superior. From a high vantage point, Ely watches the exchange with a calculating gaze, noting his sister's sudden change in demeanor. Meanwhile, Diane finally returns from the bakery with a bag of baguettes, completely oblivious to the high-stakes confrontation. Penny continues her tirade, pointing a demanding finger at the young lady who seems completely unfazed by the tantrum. Emi's gaze sharpens, her eyes reflecting a cold, calculating depth that far exceeds her youthful appearance. She raises a hand to her chin, her presence suddenly radiating a chilling aura that freezes the air around her. This is the moment she decides to show this brat exactly what it means to be a true villainess. Back at the Morwen ducal mansion, stacks of heavy ledgers and ancient books clutter the desks of the first-floor office. Ely hunches over his work, his quill scratching against parchment as he struggles to focus on his administrative duties. His eyes drift from the paperwork, filled with a lingering sense of worry for the sister he nearly lost to tragedy. He vividly recalls the original Emi, a girl who once existed like a puppet on strings with no soul behind her vacant eyes. To the rest of the world, she was nothing more than an intricate human doll or a docile robot moving through a hollow life. Though she has become much livelier since her recovery, the image of her former fragility still haunts his every thought. Overwhelmed by his protective instincts, Ely leans back and tosses a book over his face in a moment of sheer mental exhaustion. He peers out from beneath the cover, his mind racing with the need to ensure her safety in the outside world. The memory of her recent frustrations only fuels his desire to leave his post and find her immediately. He knows he cannot simply sit here while his sister navigates the potential dangers of the city alone. Pushing his work aside, he decides that the official affairs of the estate can wait until after he has checked on her. The bond between the Morwen siblings is a complex tapestry of duty, secrets, and a fierce, unspoken loyalty. High above the marketplace, a colorful bird perches quietly on a sign, observing the human drama unfolding below. Penny Bayard scoffs at Emi's silence, completely unaware that she has just stepped into the path of a predator. Emi maintains her calm, her profile appearing as sharp as a blade as she prepares to dismantle the girl's pride. She asks Penny if she's truly mistaken about their current situation, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. With a simple gesture, she reminds the girl that in the rigid hierarchy of nobility, a Morwen stands far above a Bayard. Penny's confident facade begins to crumble, her eyes widening as the weight of the social truth sets in. The pressure in the air becomes suffocating as Emi points out that even in terms of raw wealth, there is no comparison. Looking down with a gaze of pure, icy authority, Emi commands the girl to examine her own lowly position. She leans in close, her proximity making it clear that she is the one in absolute control of this encounter. Penny's pupils dilate in genuine terror, her aristocratic world shattering under Emi's intense psychological pressure. Panicking, the girl shoves Emi away, her hands trembling as she desperately tries to create some distance. Emi stands her ground firmly. The commoner boy reports to his true master, admitting that he successfully started the conflict as ordered. Diane offers a thin, enigmatic smile, his professional mask hiding a much darker and more calculating intent. Clutching his bag of baguettes, the attendant notes that the current Emi will not be nearly as easy to manipulate. The young boy trembles in the presence of the man's hidden aura, realizing he's dealing with someone truly dangerous. Diane glances toward Eli's hiding spot, fully aware that the young knight is watching him with growing suspicion. Eli stares back with a look of cold distrust, realizing the threats within the mansion are just as deadly as those outside. A dark, web-like shadow spreads across the horizon, signifying a destiny that will bind Emi to this house until her very end. Diane wears a mockingly polite smile as he realizes the Morwen's loyal watchdog has finally sniffed him out. Eli's expression is hard as stone, his eyes burning with a silent promise of violence for the man who endangered his sister. With a chillingly calm demeanor, Diane notes that as long as Emi is breathing, she will never be allowed to escape his grasp. He offers a casual, dismissive wave, telling the commoner boy to scurry away before the real trouble starts. A sharp glint flashes in the attendant's eye, revealing the cold predator lurking beneath the facade of a humble servant. Eli launches a high-speed aerial assault, but Diane simply raises a finger to his lips in a gesture of mocking silence. The young knight descends like a storm, his aura flaring as he prepares to strike down the man he views as a domestic threat. Diane remains eerily still, his reflection shattering as he questions if he should address Eli by his true, hidden title. A massive burst of magical energy erupts as Eli's blaze cuts through the air with lethal intent. The attendant barely flinches as a cold steel blade is pressed against his throat, his composure remaining absolutely unshakable. Eli's heterochromatic eyes narrow with a murderous intensity, warning the blonde madman to keep his schemes to himself. Diane accepts the insult with a graceful tilt of his head, treating the threat as if it were a high society compliment. Meanwhile, a very impatient Emi stands in the square, her foot tapping as she wonders what's taking her attendant so long. The afternoon sun beats down on the quiet rooftops of the shopping district as the tension in the air slowly dissipates. Emi huffs and turns her back to the street, her patience finally reaching its absolute breaking point. Diane finally reappears with a smooth apology, causing the young miss to spin around with an annoyed pout. He radiates a sudden, dazzling aura of beauty that leaves Emi completely stunned and momentarily speechless. Her wide, ruby-red eyes scan his face, searching for any sign of the struggle she suspects took place. She commands him to kneel, and the tall attendant immediately bows his head to meet her level with professional grace. Emi reaches out with a gentle hand, cupping his jaw as she inspects a fresh, thin cut on his cheek. Her expression softens into one of genuine concern as she asks him exactly what happened during his brief absence. She traces the edge of the wound with her thumb, her touch light and filled with an unexpected maternal warmth. From behind a nearby pillar, Eli watches the interaction with a face contorted by pure, unadulterated jealousy. Diane weaves a blatant lie, claiming he simply encountered a rowdy puppy that tried to snatch his bag of treats. He takes her hand with a look of devoted adoration, praising the young lady for her adorable level of worry. Emi's face turns bright red from the sudden praise, her internal defenses kicking into high gear. Diane leans in to regain her focus, telling her that her own appearance is far more important than a minor scratch. With a clean handkerchief, he carefully wipes a lingering crumb from her face with the precision of a master artist. He offers her a playful, knowing wink, clearly enjoying the way he can rattle her composed exterior. Eli remains tucked away in the shadows, his aura radiating enough resentment to chill the entire city block. Diane catches the knight's gaze out of the corner of his eye, finding the boy's overprotective fury to be quite entertaining. Somewhere else in the city, the heavy green skirts of Penny Bayard's dress rustle as she stomps down a deserted alleyway. She leans against a cold stone wall, her pride shattered after being so thoroughly humiliated in public. The girl's gloved hand trembles against the masonry as she tries to process the overwhelming fear Emi instilled in her. She bites her lip in frustration, realizing she has utterly failed the secret task her father assigned to her. Her gaze falls to the ground as she struggles with a confusing realization regarding the girl she was supposed to hate. A memory of Emi's former, hollow gaze flashes through her mind, contrasting sharply with the beautifully intense girl she just met. Penny covers her burning cheeks, unable to deny that the supposed puppet of the Morwen house has become hauntingly stunning. Unbeknownst to the noble girl, a massive, feathered shadow looms over her from the top of the alley wall. A giant bird-like creature fixes its glowing red eye on the unsuspecting girl, its predatory instincts locked onto her. Sensing a sudden shift in the air, Penny turns her head toward the darkness with a look of growing unease. Her pupils shrink in pure terror as she finally comes face to face with the monstrous threat emerging from the shadows. A blood-curdling scream echoes through the district as a massive, Darkwing sweeps down to claim its prize. Penny trembles in the shadows, her aristocratic pride replaced by a primal fear as a massive silhouette looms behind her. A single, unblinking eye stares down at its prey, the creature's feathers rustling with a sickening, soft sound. Sensing the sudden shift in the air, the girl slowly turns her head, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her pupils contract into pinpricks of pure terror as she finally realizes she isn't alone in the dark alley. A blood-curdling scream pierces the twilight air, echoing through the quiet streets as the monster claims its prize. Miles away, Viscount Bayard mindlessly taps his quill, his thoughts clearly far removed from his official paperwork. A pair of servants enter the room with grim expressions, reporting the news of his daughter's sudden disappearance after her encounter with the Morwens. Instead of panic, a wicked smirk plays across the Viscount's lips as he processes the potential political leverage this tragedy provides. He looks down with a cold, calculating gaze, deciding that Penny's disappearance is the perfect excuse to pressure the ducal household. Under the glow of a full moon, the Morwen mansion stands as a silent, imposing fortress against the night sky. Emi leans against the cold stone of her balcony, her white hair flowing like silk in the midnight breeze. She stares out at the horizon, wondering if her original world is still moving forward without its star creator. A heavy sense of isolation settles over her as she realizes how disconnected she truly feels from this fantasy reality. A dark, intrusive thought flickers through her mind, questioning if a leap into the unknown would return her to her true home. She peers over the edge, looking down at the distant, moonlit courtyard 3 stories below. Her heart aches with a desperate longing to wake up from this beautiful but terrifying dream. With a trembling breath, she places a bare foot on the stone ledge, testing the weight of her resolve. Her eyes cloud with a deep melancholy, feeling as though she is nothing more than a ghost haunting another girl's life. As blue feathers drift past her vision like falling stars, she prepares to make a choice that cannot be undone. Suddenly, a pair of frantic hands grab her waist, yanking her back toward the safety of the balcony floor. Feathers scatter in the wake of the sudden movement, settling quietly against the ornate railing. Eli's face is a mask of pure, unadulterated horror as he screams her name, his voice cracking with desperation. He holds her tightly, his body shaking as he pulls her away from the edge of the abyss. A small, plump bird watches the dramatic scene from its perch, appearing completely bewildered by the human chaos. The twins collapse onto the floor together, the silence of the room heavy with the weight of what almost happened. Eli rests his head on his hand, his expression soaring into a pout as he tries to process his overwhelming fear. He reaches out and grips Emi's hand with a strength that betrays his internal panic. Emi looks at him with wide, guilty eyes, realizing the depth of the pain she nearly caused him. She offers a soft, sincere apology, noticing that his hands won't stop trembling despite his best efforts to stay composed. She looks down at their joined hands, her heart heavy with a secret she can never share. Internally, she laments that she is an imposter, receiving the devotion meant for a sister who is already gone. The next morning, the sun rises over the mansion, painting the stone walls in hues of gold and blue. A gloved hand reaches out with practiced precision, sharply pulling back the heavy velvet curtains. Diane stands bathed in the morning light, announcing that it is finally time for the young lady to face the day. Emi remains buried under her covers, clutching her pillow as if it were a shield against the outside world. She blinks sleepily, her mind struggling to grasp the news that she has an immediate appointment with the Emperor. Before she can even protest, a sudden whoosh of movement sends her world spinning. In a display of terrifying efficiency, Diane has her fully dressed and standing before the mirror in the blink of an eye. Emi flashes back to the previous night, remembering how Eli had been so focused on her safety that he forgot the royal summons. She wears a look of comical disbelief, realizing she's about to be thrust into the highest level of social warfare without any preparation. Diane mentions that a new bodyguard has been stationed just outside her door to ensure her safety during the trip. Emi stares at the heavy doors, curious about the person who will be tasked with protecting her life. She cautiously pushes the door open, her eyes still heavy with the lingering fog of sleep. Her ruby-red eyes widen as she catches her first glimpse of the young boy waiting in the hallway. Standing before her is Gray, a stoic youth whose sharp uniform and disciplined posture command immediate respect. He drops to one knee with the grace of a seasoned knight, pledging his service to the young miss. As he looks up, Emi is struck by the striking beauty of his heterochromatic eyes, one red and one violet. She immediately goes into artist mode, internally fangirling over how incredibly cool his character design is. Suddenly, a cold shiver runs down her spine as she notices more feathers drifting through the air. She looks around the empty hallway, a sense of unease washing over her as she feels an invisible weight. Perched on a branch just outside the window, the bird from the alley watches her with a gaze that is far too intelligent for an animal. Meanwhile, in the distant kingdom of Huoyu, the inspection division prepares for a high-stakes mission. Sharp scissors snip through long strands of hair, signaling the start of a serious transformation. Chen Qi admires his new, shorter hairstyle in the mirror, looking every bit the handsome young officer. He strikes a pose, fully satisfied with his handiwork as he prepares for his undercover operation. With a cheerful wave, he announces that he is ready to board the ship bound for the Kapir Empire. His expression sharpens, his eyes reflecting a hidden depth of skill as he discusses the target they are hunting. A wanted poster reveals the truth. They are tracking the very same avian monster that is currently stalking Emi. Back at the capital, Emi's thoughts drift to the man she is about to meet, wondering what kind of person the Emperor truly is. Deep within the palace, a pair of sharp, intelligent eyes slowly open as the ruler awakens. Reynold Kapir, the current emperor, offers a charming but dangerous smile as he prepares to welcome his young guest. Chen Kui offers a confident smirk, his eyes sparkling with the thrill of the upcoming hunt. He studies the classified file on the Capellian bird, a creature born from pure, concentrated agony. A massive vessel cuts through the open sea, carrying the Huayu officers toward their target. Seated on the deck, Chen meticulously reviews his notes on the mutated avian spirit. The report details how a parent bird's grief transformed it into this dangerous, cat-tailed anomaly. A startled crewman waves his arms frantically, shouting for the young officer to get down from the rigging. Chen ignores the warning, casually perched atop the ship's highest tower to get a better view of the horizon. He squints against the sea breeze, noticing a familiar coastline emerging from the morning mist. The sailor confirms their arrival with a respectful salute, acknowledging they've reached their destination. The white sails billow under a clear sky as the ship enters the waters of the Kapur Empire. A regal blue carriage rattles through the capital streets, scattering golden jingo leaves in its wake. Inside, Emi stares into the distance, her mind racing with everything she knows about the local lore. Duke Fyodor remains a pillar of icy silence, his presence filling the carriage with a heavy tension. The towering spires of the royal palace come into view as the carriage slows to a halt. Emi glances out the window, her heart pounding at the sheer scale of the imperial architecture. Her wide eyes reflect the sunlight, betraying the deep-seated anxiety she feels about this audience. The royal palace of Kapur stands as a monument of power, its red roofs piercing the clouds. Stepping onto the cobblestones, Emi clutches her skirts, trying to maintain her composure despite her nerves. A sudden, jagged shout shatters the peace, as an angry voice brands the Morwens as bastards. Viscount Bayard lunges forward, his face twisted in a mask of grief and accusation. Emi freezes in place, completely blindsided by the man's sudden and violent outburst. The Viscount desperately pleads with the guards, claiming his daughter Penny vanished after meeting Emi. He points a trembling finger at her, screaming that she must have kidnapped and imprisoned the girl. Eli's expression darkens with murderous intent, clearly losing patience with the man's public lunacy. A flash of magical energy ignites in the Viscount's eye as he prepares to strike out in rage. He extends his hand, a dark magic circle manifesting as he prepares a lethal curse. A guard attempts to intercept him, but the sheer force of the Viscount's desperation is overwhelming. Suddenly, the chaos is silenced as the Duke steps forward, his aura crushing the ambient magic. Duke Fyodor stands amidst swirling magical shards, looking like a god of winter ready to pass judgment. Emi watches her father in awe, realizing the terrifying gap in power between him and the Viscount. With a simple, cold gesture, the Duke commands the hysterical man to hold his tongue. His crimson eyes narrow with a lethal sharpness, warning the Viscount that his life is forfeit. The guards tackle the Viscount to the ground, ending the scene as he grovels in the dirt. Eli immediately moves to Emi's side, fussing over her hair to ensure she wasn't ruffled by the encounter. The Viscount is hauled away, his face hidden as he is led toward the palace gates. Out of sight, the man's eye glints with a chilling, calculated lucidity. A thin, satisfied smirk plays on his lips, revealing that this public scene was entirely planned. Emi remains uneasy, watching the guards depart with a sense that she stepped into a trap. The surrounding soldiers maintain a tight formation as they escort the distraught father inside. Emi looks away, her brow furrowed as she tries to piece together the Viscount's true motive. High above the palace spires, the purple-winged monster flaps its wings, watching the drama unfold. Inside the Emperor's private chambers, the sunlight catches the ornate carvings of the furniture. A rhythmic tapping echoes through the room as the Emperor plays with a golden quill. Duke Fyodor sips his tea with effortless grace, seemingly unaffected by the morning's violence. Emi sits rigidly on the velvet sofa, her hands folded neatly as she tries to appear invisible. The Emperor sits across from them, his relaxed posture and open collar radiating a dangerous confidence. Seeking a shred of security, Emi reaches out and quietly tugs on her father's sleeve. Reynold Kapur fixes his glowing, magic-infused eyes on her, his gaze feeling like a physical weight. Emi shivers under the scrutiny, giving a tiny, hesitant nod to the ruler's playful greeting. The Emperor reaches out to touch her, but his hand is suddenly blocked by a protective barrier. The Duke has caught the Emperor's wrist, his expression remaining perfectly calm yet undeniably firm. Reynold closes his eyes and chuckles, clearly amused by the Duke's sudden show of fatherly protection. He reopens them, the magical intensity fading into a look of feigned innocence. The Emperor of Light offers a sharp, knowing smile, finally addressing Emi with a tone of mock respect. Reynold Kapur, the Emperor, leans back with a mocking glint in his eye, asking if Emi wants a formal apology for his previous behavior. He leans closer, his tone dripping with a dangerous playfulness, as he offers the young girl a hug from his broad arms instead. Duke Fyodor watches the exchange with a chilling, silent glare that could freeze the very air in the room. The Duke's voice is like a blade as he commands the Emperor to disappear from his daughter's sight immediately. Emi and Gray stand outside the massive, ornate doors of the reception room, the weight of the political atmosphere heavy on their shoulders. Emi's chibified face is a mask of pure annoyance as she realizes the Emperor is far more frivolous and fake than the character she originally wrote. Gray tilts his head with concern, noticing his young lady has suddenly spiraled into a silent, internal crisis. She clutches her head in frustration, her mind racing with the terrifying realization that the Emperor might actually despise her. A dark, gloomy aura surrounds her as she laments the malicious nature of the man she just met. A text box reveals her inner turmoil. Knowing that no one would believe her origin as an author, even if she tried to explain it. She sighs, feeling the crushing weight of being a lonely creator, trapped within her own increasingly chaotic and dangerous world. Shaking off the dread, she signals to Gray that they should find somewhere else to explore while the adults finish their meeting. Inside the room, Reynolds' expression turns serious as he contemplates the nature of soul exchanges and the child's true identity. Emi freezes, her sharp ears catching a snippet of the heavy conversation through the thick wood of the door. Gray looks at her curiously, wondering why she's suddenly become as still as a statue. She leans in, whispering a frantic question to her bodyguard about whether he can hear the voices inside. Gray closes his eyes, focusing his heightened senses to see if anything can penetrate the Imperial Palace's soundproofing. He shakes his head, confirming that he can't hear a single word from the sealed room. Emi rubs her temples, wondering if her anxiety is causing her to hallucinate voices that aren't actually there. Her eyes snap open in shock as she realizes the words she heard were definitely real and incredibly troubling. She stands close to Gray, her hand hovering near her chest as she tries to process the Emperor's cryptic remarks regarding her soul. The Emperor and the Duke sit across from each other, the casual setting masking the high-stakes interrogation taking place. A vision of Liliana's prophecy appears, showing a woman with flowing blue hair and the weight of a tragic destiny. The prophecy reveals a grim fate, stating that out of 2 children, only one is destined to survive this ordeal. An image of a young girl in a veil suggests that Emi's presence at the palace might be a harbinger of an inauspicious end. Reynolds sighs with a dramatic flair, calling the Duke a heartless man for his cold and calculating demeanor. Duke Fyodor remains unmoved, demanding to know what kind of tricks the Emperor played while he was searching for a way to dispel the curse. The Emperor rests his chin on his hand, his gaze sharpening as he asks if the Duke truly suspects him of harming the child. Fyodor's eyes narrow with a lethal intensity, stating that he only cares about the survival of his true child. Outside, Emi stands in the hallway, the chilling weight of her father's words about her being a fake echoing in her mind. She stares at the floor, her mind spinning as she questions what surviving really means in this context. A close-up of her face shows her growing fear that she is being treated as a mere expendable shell by those around her. She realizes that the hidden information in this reality is far more complex and darker than anything she included in her manhua. She turns her head slowly, her eyes filled with a deep, haunting sadness as she looks toward the palace window. Her pupils shrink in a sudden jolt of adrenaline as she spots something terrifying reflecting in the glass. Gray immediately leaps into action, positioning himself between Emi and the massive, feathered eye peering through the window. Emi recognizes the creature as a monster that wasn't supposed to appear until the much later stages of the story. Gray draws his weapon, his face set in a grim expression of duty as the monster looms over them. The bird-like creature lets out a chilling, high-pitched cry, its predatory gaze locked onto the young girl. Emi stares back in frozen terror, seeing her own small reflection in the monster's unblinking, blood-red eye. The sound of cracking glass fills the hallway as the structural integrity of the window begins to fail. Shards of glass explode inward, raining down like deadly diamonds as the creature forces its way into the palace. Gray raises his heavy mechanical shield to block the onslaught, the force of the impact vibrating through his entire body. A stray shard grazes Gray's cheek, drawing a thin line of blood as he struggles to hold the line against the beast. He grinds his teeth, his violet eye glowing with a fierce determination to protect his charge at any cost. Emi's very existence seems to fracture into 1,000 pieces as she begins to fade into a cloud of dark, ethereal shards. Gray reaches out desperately, but his hand only passes through the shadowy mist where the young lady once stood. He stares at his empty palm in a state of complete shock, his mind unable to process her sudden disappearance. Emi finds herself weightless, drifting through a silent, starry abyss as she falls further away from reality. Her eyes are wide with a haunting sorrow, realizing she might never find her way back to the world of the living. She reflects on the mountain of mysteries left behind, though they feel strangely insignificant in the face of the void. A wave of resignation washes over her as she wonders if this is the end or merely a return to her original life. She reaches a trembling hand toward the distant stars, certain that no one is coming to pull her from the dark. Suddenly, a warm light pierces the gloom as a mysterious, ethereal figure manifests within the silence. A slender hand reaches through the darkness, seeking to bridge the gap between their souls. The spirit firmly grasps Emi's wrist, halting her descent with an unexpected and grounding strength. Looking up, Emi sees a woman who looks like a more radiant version of herself, offering a gentle smile and a plea to wake up. Emi's mind reels with confusion, unable to identify the beautiful stranger who seems to know her so well. Her vision begins to flicker, noticing that the woman possesses the exact features of the villainess she once designed. Despite the urgency of the moment, a heavy lethargy pulls at Emi's consciousness, making it impossible to stay awake. She feels herself slipping back into the fog, the distant echoes of her name being called acting as her only anchor. On the cold stone floor of the palace, Penny Bayard desperately shakes Emi's limp body, begging her to open her eyes. Penny looks up with a face pale with terror, sensing a monstrous presence looming directly behind them. The Capellian bird glares down with its twisted, bleeding eyes, its beak dripping with a dark, malevolent energy. Penny cowers over Emi, acting as a human shield, even though she knows she has no power to stop the beast. High above the Imperial City, Chen Kui balances precariously on a rooftop while performing a complex divination ritual. He focuses his spiritual energy into a paper crane, surrounding himself with glowing ancient trigrams to guide his path. With a sharp flick of his wrist, the enchanted crane takes flight, successfully locking onto the monster's location. Back in the hallway, Emi's eyes finally snap open, but they are cold and devoid of their usual warmth. A single, crystal-clear tear escapes her eye as she stares blankly at the chaos unfolding around her. The monster ignores the change, opening its maw to reveal a swirling vortex of destructive purple energy. Penny screams in a fit of pure despair, certain that this is the moment their lives will end. The beast unleashes a massive blast, the resulting explosion shattering the floor and sending Penny tumbling through the smoke. A thick curtain of dust and debris blankets the area, masking the aftermath of the lethal strike. From within the gloom, a small silhouette stands perfectly upright, completely unharmed by the avian's attack. The Capellian bird tilts its head in genuine confusion, wondering how its prey could still be standing. Emi's voice cuts through the silence like ice, mockingly labeling the creature as a pathetic, disgusting mixed breed. Penny watches from the ground, shivering as she realizes the girl standing before her is no longer the Emi she knew. The possessed Emi adjusts her sleeve with a terrifying grace, her expression twisted into a mask of regal disdain. She offers the monster a cold, final send-off, her eyes gleaming with a power that dwarfs the beast's own. In a flash of golden light, magical chains erupt from the air, binding the bird's wings and pinning it to the spot. The creature thrashes violently against the restraints, but the holy energy refuses to budge. Emi rests her chin on her hand, observing the monster's struggle with a bored, predatory amusement. She senses a powerful presence approaching, and decides that her temporary intervention must come to an end. With a playful, mocking wave, she disappears back into the depths of her own mind. Penny calls out in a panic as the strange aura vanishes as quickly as it arrived. Emi's body loses all its strength, collapsing forward as her consciousness completely fails her. The golden chains dissolve into nothingness, freeing the monster from its magical prison. The bird's eyes glow with a murderous red light, ready to tear the defenseless girls apart in its rage. Penny pulls Emi closer to her chest, sobbing as she prepares for the inevitable final blow. Suddenly, a glowing paper crane descends from the ceiling, ringing with a sharp spiritual frequency. The monster looks up, its feathers bristling with annoyance at the persistent interruptions. Penny blinks through her tears, seeing the paper bird hover protectively over them like a tiny guardian. Finally, Chen Kuiyai shatters the ceiling, descending into the hallway amidst a storm of glowing hexagrams and ready for war. Emi's heavy eyelids flutter open, her vision slowly returning as she struggles back to consciousness. Amidst the swirling shadows of the dark domain, a figure stands bathed in the protective glow of an ancient magic circle. Emi's pupils contract in sharp realization as she finally recognizes the peril surrounding them. The colossal Capellian bird spreads its wings, its massive form casting a suffocating shadow over the three young girls. With a thunderous impact, the beast is momentarily pinned down as the mysterious savior stands triumphantly atop its back. The pink-haired warrior glances back, her expression stern as she warns that there is no time for idle explanations. She explains that the creature possesses an uncanny ability to regenerate, making it an almost impossible foe to put down for good. Emi clutches her chest, her heart hammering against her ribs as she tries to find an exit from this nightmare. Flashbacks of the chaotic attack and Penny's desperate protection race through her mind like a fever dream. She rubs her temples, desperately trying to reconcile the reality of the situation with the plot of her own manhua. Her jaw drops in a comedic mix of shock and disbelief as the identity of their savior finally clicks into place. Emi stares in awe at Chen Kui, the legendary female lead who shouldn't be appearing this early in the narrative. Shaking off her stupor, she realizes that as the author, she is the only one who knows the monster's secret weakness. Emi shouts out a command, directing Kuyi to aim her strikes specifically at the Capellian bird's eyes to limit its movement. Moving with the grace of a seasoned hunter, the warrior leaps into the air, her weapon trailing a streak of brilliant white light, a precise magic of his young lady. He kneels before Emi, his voice low and steady as he apologizes for his late arrival to the battlefield. He gently takes her small hands in his own, ensuring she hasn't sustained any injuries during the chaos. Gray presents a fractured green gemstone wreathed in dark, wispy smoke, an object that seems to pulse with a tragic, lingering sentience. He looks Emi directly in the eye, explaining that this peculiar artifact holds a secret that only she has the power to unlock. Emi tilts her head in confusion, wondering what possible connection she could have to a piece of corrupted monster essence. Gray reveals the impossible truth. Emi is the only one capable of hearing the desperate voice trapped within the stone. Chen Kui looks on with skepticism, unable to comprehend the strange spiritual resonance passing between the bodyguard and the child. As Emi touches the gem, a faint, heartbreaking whisper of a child calling for their mother echoes in the back of her mind. She gasps as the realization hits her, confirming that the monster they fought is actually a vessel for a grieving soul. The Capellian bird's remaining eye narrows in a mixture of pain and recognition as the voice from the gem cries out once more. Gray instantly draws his blade, leveling it at the beast's throat with a stern warning to remain still, if it ever hopes to find what it's looking for. The spirit within the gem pleads for help, its voice cracking with the weight of a long-lost hope and a desperate need to save its parent. Emi clutches the gemstone to her chest, her heart aching as she feels the raw sorrow of the entity trapped inside. Her gaze sharpens with a newfound resolve as she asks the spirit to reveal the truth of the tragedy that befell them. A vision of the past manifests from the shadows, revealing a young girl named Hua Wandu, before her life was twisted by dark magic. The memory shifts to the serene kingdom of Huyu, where the air was once filled with the scent of flowers and the sound of laughter. Wandu's mother caresses her daughter's cheek, promising to return quickly and telling her to stay safe within the pavilion. The young girl waves goodbye, never imagining that this mundane moment would be the last time she would ever see her mother's face. From the shadows of the ornate structure, a group of sinister, cloaked figures emerges like predatory ghosts. Two men loom over the unsuspecting child, their faces hidden and their intentions clearly malicious. Wandu looks up with innocent, wide eyes, completely unaware of the danger closing in on her. The strangers lie to her, claiming her mother is calling for her as they prepare to snatch her away from her home. One of the captors raises a hand, weaving a dark, hypnotic spell designed to paralyze his victim's will. Wandu's expression shifts to one of sudden, sharp alarm as she realizes these men are not friends. Her vision begins to blur and fade as the malevolent magic takes hold of her consciousness. She finds herself unable to move or scream, swallowed by a cold, encroaching darkness that severs her from reality. The cloaked figures lead the small, helpless girl away, disappearing into the fog of a stolen future. With one final, silent plea, the child calls out for her mother as she is dragged into a life of inhuman experimentation. Moments later, the mother returns to the empty pavilion, her heart sinking as she finds nothing but the lingering chill of the kidnappers. She collapses in total despair, her screams echoing through the gardens as she realizes her precious daughter has vanished without a trace. The grieving mother collapses, her hair fanning out like shadows as she succumbs to a madness born from loss. A single, blood-red tear falls from an eye consumed by darkness, marking the birth of a Capellian bird from the depths of despair. The avian manifestation drifts over the village, fruitlessly searching every child's face for a glimpse of her lost Wandu. The creature gazes down at the innocent children playing on the steps, its heart breaking further with every failed encounter. Suddenly, burning red chains erupt from the void, binding the divine bird in a cruel, inescapable grip. A cold, metallic needle looms over the creature, filled with a shimmering purple toxin designed to overwrite its nature. The jagged tip pierces the bird's wing, injecting the corrupting substance directly into its spiritual essence. A sinister figure in a tattered cloak conducts the ritual, his laughter drowned out by the bird's agonized cries. The kidnapper grins with a sadistic glee, tightening the chains as he prepares to turn a mother's love into a lethal weapon. His eyes burn with a demonic red light, relishing the moment he finally breaks the spirit of the celestial beast. The world fades into a hazy, fractured memory as the corruption takes root, severing the bird from its original purpose. Emi reels from the spiritual backlash, her face a mask of shock as she processes the horrific truth behind the monster's origin. The spirit of Wandu appears beside her, her voice trembling as she explains that those strange men are the true villains. The Capellian bird sheds a final, lucid tear, a momentary glimmer of the mother still trapped within the feathered nightmare. A violent surge of energy ripples through the hallway, the beast thrashing as the corruption fights to maintain control. Emi realizes with growing dread that knowing the bird's identity won't stop its increasingly unstable and lethal attacks. She clutches her chest as the spiritual weight of the situation threatens to crush her resolve from the inside out. A cold realization settles in. Without the rarest light attribute magic, they have no hope of escaping this dark domain alive. Wandu's spirit breaks down into fresh sobs, her heart shattering at the sight of what her mother has become. Emi wonders if her own death in this world would simply send her back to her original life, or if this is truly the end. She looks toward her companions, knowing she can't abandon them to a fate she helped write. A thunderous explosion of pure white light suddenly tears through the gloom, momentarily blinding everyone in the corridor. A gentle, ethereal voice echoes through the silence, offering help in a tone that feels both ancient and familiar. The Capellian bird freezes in midair, its eyes wide with a confusion that borders on genuine terror. Descending within a massive, radiant golden sigil, the original Villainess manifests like a goddess of mercy and judgment. Emi stares up in wide-eyed wonder, momentarily distracted by the sheer elegance of the spirit's dramatic entrance. The green gemstone vibrates violently as dark smoke curls around its facets, responding to the presence of the divine. Wandu's spirit lunges forward with a protective scream, refusing to let anyone else harm her mother. A massive, stylized eye-glyph appears in the air, instantly freezing the surrounding reality in a state of magical stasis. Shards of light dance through the air as the collision of powers begins to fracture the very fabric of the dark domain. The veiled spirit maintains her prayerful stance, calling out for Gray to synchronize their power for the final gambit. Gray materializes behind Emi with feline stealth, his hand steadying her as he prepares to act as her magical anchor. Together they face the beast, a massive, multi-layered magic circle erupting behind them to channel their combined wills. The spirit whispers a sacred request, her words carrying the weight of a prayer directed at the heavens themselves. Ethereal strands of energy weave together in the air, forming a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. Emi's eyes glow with a fierce, celestial fire as she extends her hand to unleash the full force of the purification. The Capellian bird is instantly ensnared by glowing golden rings, its movements halted by a power it cannot hope to resist. Chen Qi watches from the sidelines, her jaw dropping as she witnesses a level of magic that defies all known logic. The veiled spirit and Emi act in perfect unison, blending the purest light and dark attributes into a flawless purification array. A swarm of vengeful child spirits begins to manifest, and Qi quickly raises a violet shield to hold back the spectral tide. Wandu finds herself surrounded by the wailing ghosts of other victims, their collective sorrow threatening to overwhelm her. The barrier groans under the pressure of the spirit's assault, forcing Qi to pour every ounce of her energy into the defense. The warrior grits her teeth, shouting for the purification to finish before the shield shatters completely. The veiled spirit ignores the chaos, focusing entirely on the glowing orb of energy pulsating between her palms. She clasps her hands together in a final, solemn gesture, sealing the intent of the holy ritual. An immense, blindingly beautiful golden array expands across the entire floor, washing away the darkness in a tide of divine light. The original Emi spirit stands at the center of the chaos, her hands glowing with the herald of a divine restoration. She clasped her fingers together, focusing every ounce of her ethereal energy into a singular point of light. A colossal, multi-layered magic seal erupts through the darkness, pulsing with a command to purify the corrupted realm. Wandu lunges forward through the shimmering light, reaching out to the mother she has searched for across lifetimes. The monstrous bird form dissolves, allowing mother and daughter to share one final, tearful embrace in the center of the storm. Gray watches the scene with a cold, analytical eye, ensuring no lingering shadows remain to threaten his charge. With a thunderous boom, the domain shatters into a swarm of ascending souls, finally freed from their agonizing torment. Emi stands amidst the fading glitter of the spirits, her heart heavy as she realizes the true scale of the tragedy. She looks to Gray for confirmation, and with a silent nod, he assures her that the immediate nightmare has concluded. The heavy toll of the ritual suddenly hits Emi, her body racked by a violent, blood-stained cough. Wandu stands bathed in the soft glow of the afterlife, looking back at Emi with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. Emi's vision blurs as she clutches her chest, the physical strain of channeling such immense power nearly breaking her. Wandu directs her final request to Gray, urging him to escort the young lady out before the domain collapses entirely. Emi's eyes fill with fresh tears as she realizes that her new friend cannot follow them back to the world of the living. Wandu offers a gentle, heartbreaking smile, explaining that her journey has finally reached its natural end. A sharp gasp escapes Emi as she realizes the permanence of this farewell, the weight of the loss sinking in. The young spirit begins to drift away, her form becoming one with the peaceful light of the heavens. She looks down one last time, whispering her regret that they couldn't share a normal childhood together. Shimmering particles of light dance around her as Wandu's physical presence begins to dissolve into the ether. With a final, respectful bow, she bids Lady Emi Morwen a peaceful and eternal goodnight. Meanwhile, deep within the shadows of the aristocratic prison, Viscount Bayard sits in his cell with a chillingly calm demeanor. A sinister smirk plays across his lips as he revels in the chaos he has successfully orchestrated from behind bars. He pulls out a hidden communication orb, checking the status of his grand, malevolent design. His gaze is cold and calculating as he peers through a lens, monitoring the movements of his unsuspecting commodities. The reflection in the glass reveals that every moment of the tragedy was a calculated step in his larger game. He recalls how easily he planted the dark attribute bait, manipulating the monster to target the Morwen girl with surgical precision. By ensuring the palace guards were dismissed, he turned the drawing room corridor into a perfect, inescapable kill zone. He views Emi as nothing more than a valuable asset, a frail child whose capture will finalize his ultimate victory. The Viscount shows no mercy for the lives ruined, prepared to let everyone burn in hell as long as his plan succeeds. A mysterious hooded figure appears within his vision, a variable in the equation that even he didn't fully predict. The original spirit of Emi stands tall, her blindfold hiding eyes that have seen the truth of this world's cruelty. She looks down at her bandaged hands, the scars of the purification ritual serving as a testament to her resolve. Gray holds the exhausted Emi close, his loyalty to his young lady far outweighing any fear of the supernatural forces at play. The spirit offers a knowing smirk, entrusting the girl's future to the only person strong enough to protect her. The ethereal spirit of the original Emi stands as a silent guardian, her presence a fading echo of divine power. She looks down at her bandaged hands, feeling her remaining vitality slowly ebb away the closer she remains to her successor. Gray holds the unconscious young lady, with a rare display of tenderness, expressing his silent gratitude for the spirit's intervention. In the depths of her mind, the memories of Zhang Qinlin begin to resurface, drifting through a sea of static and forgotten names. She recoils from the echoes of her past life, desperately trying to shield her mind from a name that no longer belongs to her. Emi's eyes snap open as she finally breaks free from the suffocating darkness of her dreams. She finds herself resting in her own chambers, her small frame looking incredibly fragile against the vastness of the silken sheets. Outside, the soft glow of twilight bathes the Morwen estate, signaling that time has moved on without her. She sits up slowly, her mind a fog as she tries to piece together the chaotic events of the palace battle. Her gaze is heavy with exhaustion, her vision struggling to focus on the familiar surroundings of her room. Beside the bed, a loyal maid sits in a quiet vigil, her head nodding as she fights off the weight of sleep. The maid's eyes fly open at the slightest rustle of the blankets, her instincts as a caretaker instantly kicking in. Emi looks at her with a dazed expression, her voice failing her as she attempts to process the woman's presence. The maid jolts upright with a cry of pure joy, her sudden movement startling the quiet of the infirmary. Emi winces at the high-pitched volume, her senses still far too sensitive to handle the maid's enthusiastic shouting. The news of her awakening ripples through the quiet halls of the mansion like a sudden storm. It is revealed that a full week has passed since the ritual, with both Chen Qiyi and Gray having departed for their own duties. Kenner and Eli soon arrive at her bedside, their faces etched with the lingering stress of her long unconsciousness. Kenner maintains a calm, protective stance while young Eli watches his sister with an intensity that mirrors his fear of losing her. Emi accepts a warm drink, the simple steam rising from the cup providing a small sense of comfort in her weakened state. She looks down into the liquid, her mind racing with the realization of how much effort was spent on her recovery. The maid stands ready to assist at a moment's notice, her dedication a testament to the genuine care Emi now commands. Emi is struck by a flash of her former life, remembering the cold isolation of a girl who had no one to watch over her. Her hands tremble slightly as she grips the ornate porcelain, struggling to accept the warmth of a family she never expected to have. Thoughts of Penny weigh heavily on her heart, the guilt of her own perceived powerlessness threatening to overshadow her survival. A single tear threatens to fall as she reflects on the different version of herself she is forced to become. Eli's eyes widen in shock as he senses the shift in his sister's mood, his protective instincts flaring up instantly. He calls out her name with a sudden, desperate urgency, breaking the heavy silence of the room. The outburst startles the entire group, drawing confused looks from Kenner and the attending staff. Eli quickly becomes flustered, waving his hands as he tries to pivot the conversation toward a more lighthearted topic. He leans in close to Emi, suggesting that a visit target's essence is finally complete. She strolls through the streets with a calm grace, her task finished, but her mind still occupied by the palace conspiracy. She adjusts her travel gear, well aware that the political fallout of the Capellian bird incident is only just beginning. Qiyi reflects on the high-ranking nobles involved, realizing that a third party's interference nearly sparked a diplomatic disaster. She contemplates the gravity of the situation, knowing that the royal family itself was almost ensnared in a web of lies. A sudden shout from the crowd breaks her concentration, signaling an unexpected encounter in the busy thoroughfare. She accidentally bumps into a passerby, the impact catching her off guard amidst her deep thoughts. Qiyi quickly offers a polite apology, her expression shifting to one of genuine surprise as she realizes who stands before her. Standing there is a young man of noble bearing, his striking blonde hair and purple eyes marking him as the Prince of Kapir. Eli gets flustered, waving his hands as he suggests a relaxing outing to meet the cousin who has just returned to the capital. He leans in toward his sister, hoping the change of scenery will help her finally decompress after her ordeal. Emi remains quiet, her mind racing as she tries to recall the identity of this mysterious relative from her knowledge of the original story. She suddenly realizes the man in question is Lucien Kapir, the legendary male lead of the very manhua she now inhabits. The name alone carries a weight that shifts the entire political landscape of the empire. Lucien is a visionary genius, famous for being the first person in history to bridge the gap between ancient magic and complex machinery. Clad in a regal blue uniform, the prince possesses a striking beauty that makes him a literal national treasure. With a reputation that precedes him, he stands as the most promising heir to claim the imperial throne. Ili breaks her train of thought, leaning close play of pure, heart-wrenching vulnerability to win her over. Emi is immediately blindsided by the sheer intensity of his puppy dog aura as sparkles fill the air. Eli's eyes shimmer with a desperate, watery plea that is nearly impossible for any sister to ignore. The young lady finds her mental defenses crumbling under the weight of such overwhelming, innocent cuteness. She takes a long, resigned sip of her tea before nodding her agreement to go along with his plans. Eli radiates pure joy at her answer, thrilled that his sister is finally stepping back into the world. Kanner watches the exchange with a sharp, analytical eye, already calculating the logistics of their next move. He immediately orders the maid to prepare Emi for a high-stakes shopping excursion to refresh her wardrobe. Emi is left reeling as the household springs into action, dragging her toward a whirlwind of activity she wasn't prepared for. As twilight settles over the grand estate, The atmosphere shifts from frantic preparation to quiet reflection. Ely stands alone by the window, the bandaged spirit bird resting gently on his shoulder as he watches the fading light. He gazes out at the horizon, his youthful features clouded by a heavy maturity born of recent trauma. He closes his eyes for a moment, reflecting on the profound and terrifying transformation he has witnessed in his sister. He remembers a time when the previous Emi was nothing more than a hollow, soulless doll surrounded by luxury. Now, he sees her as a fragile spirit standing on the edge of a vast, shattering void of her own making. To him, her current state is like a single candle flame fighting to stay lit against a violent, encroaching gale. The fear that she might simply dissolve into the shadows haunts his every waking moment since the ritual. He pictures her standing alone under the cold starlight, looking ready to vanish into the ether at any second. The memory of her hollow, ethereal gaze serves as a constant reminder of how unstable her emotional state has become. He turns to his avian companion, acknowledging the heavy burden of keeping his sister grounded in reality. He knows that if he doesn't constantly intervene, Emi might lose herself to the darkness forever. The bird chirps a soft, knowing response, acknowledging the difficult path an elder brother must walk to protect his family. Eli's expression hardens with a new sense of purpose as he watches the shadows lengthen across the room. He vows to remain her anchor, determined to protect his younger sister from the world and from her own fading spirit. Chen Kui navigates the treacherous waters of high society, noting that the recent scandal involving high-ranking nobles could have easily spiraled into a diplomatic nightmare for the royal family. A frantic voice suddenly erupts from her communication crane, screaming her name and shattering her professional composure. Startled by the noise, she loses her footing and accidentally slams into the chest of a tall, noble passerby. The stranger catches her with practiced grace, offering a warm and incredibly disarming smile as he checks on her well-being. National embarrassment. The line abruptly goes dead, leaving Kui fuming at the lack of support from her colleagues during such a critical moment. She stands there in a state of sheer, wide-eyed panic, her mind racing to find a way to salvage her dignity. The world seems to blur around her as the stress of the day's unexpected developments finally reaches a breaking point. As night falls over the capital, the marketplace transforms into a picturesque scene of glowing lanterns and quiet cobblestone streets. Ely and Emi walk through the evening air together, their elegant black and white attire making them stand out against the twilight shadows. Emi's sharp gaze scans the surroundings, her senses on high alert as they approach the designated meeting spot. Suddenly, Lucien Capir steps into view with a friendly wave, greeting his younger cousins with a charming, carefree energy. The twins freeze in place, their expressions shifting to pure shock as they realize their cousin is accompanied by a very familiar face. A heavy silence falls over the group as the significance of this unexpected gathering becomes clear to everyone involved. Lucien stands tall as the undisputed male lead, a visionary genius who has revolutionized the empire through his mastery of magical machinery. Beside him is Chen Kui, the story's destined female lead, whose presence here complicates every one of Emi's future plans. Emi stands as the final villain of this world, her small hands clasped together, as she feels the weight of her dark reputation. Ely remains the loyal anchor by her side, despite the narrative labeling him as mere cannon fodder in the original timeline. The complex relationship map between these four individuals forms a volatile blueprint for the chaos that is about to unfold. Emi's mind spirals as she realizes that meeting like this shouldn't even be possible according to the original plot. After a short while, the group decides to move their conversation to a more private and secure location. They settle into a nearby establishment, soft expression, hoping the simple game will help ground her fading spirit. Lucien simply blushes with excitement, his only real motivation being the joy of finally finding people his own age to play with. The two boys share a moment of silent solidarity, convinced that the best way to build an alliance is through a friendly competition. As he plays a card, Lucien begins a technical discussion about the incredible potential of long-range communication devices. Kui hides behind her hand, pointing out that his country's communication crystals are far too expensive and energy-consuming for the average citizen. Lucien takes the criticism in stride, pride gleaming in his eyes as the primary creator of the very technology they are debating. Not to be outdone, Kui reveals her own brilliance as the mind behind the highly efficient communication cranes used by the common folk. Her gaze turns sharp as she drops the polite facade, her analytical mind shifting back to the high-stakes world of commerce. Lucien leans in close, his voice dropping to a whisper as he addresses her by her secret title within the powerful Huyu Chamber of Commerce. Emi can only blink in stunned silence, completely out of her depth as she listens to the two geniuses trade verbal blows. The silhouettes of these four young titans loom large against the window, marking the birth of a new destiny that will shake the foundations of the empire. Lucien leans in with a piercing gaze, directly challenging the girl's secret identity as the hidden leader of the Huyu Chamber of Commerce. He maintains a smug, knowing posture beside Eli, clearly enjoying the upper hand in this intellectual chess match. Chen Qi's composure fractures instantly, her mind racing with the terrifying realization that her cover has been blown. She desperately tries to pinpoint the exact moment her movements were compromised by the prince's intelligence network. With a sharp, rhythmic snap, she closes her cards to hide her mounting agitation from the group. She quickly raises her hand to shield her face, attempting to play off her shock with a layer of forced mystery. Lucien doesn't let up, teasing her with a flirtatious comment that only serves to heighten the tension at the table. A dark shadow of the Capellian bird looms in the back of her mind, a grim reminder of the high stakes they are playing for. She recalls the horrific fatalities the monster caused within the capital, a disaster she had hoped to keep buried. The weight of the political fallout threatens to turn the situation into a chaotic mess that no one can control. Qiyi shoots a look of pure annoyance toward the prince, feeling as though she's been lured into a trap by the Inspector Bureau. Lucien casually adjusts his hand, his fingers dancing over the cards as he calculates his next move. He flashes a brilliant, winning smile, looking every bit the charismatic mastermind the legends describe. A wave of distrust washes over the group, the atmosphere growing heavy with the unspoken secrets of the Empire's elite. Is that the involvement of so many different factions points toward a singular, hidden goal that benefits no one. The lack of concrete evidence is a source of constant frustration for those trying to protect the kingdom's peace. Emi's mind begins to spiral, realizing the original plot she memorized has been completely derailed by her own survival. Her eyes widen in a moment of cold clarity, sensing that she is no longer a bystander but a primary target. A vision of herself being shattered by unseen forces flashes before her eyes, a premonition of the danger to come. She feels the weight of her dark destiny pressing down on her, the static of the world's shifting narrative threatening to swallow her whole. Breaking her silence, Emi asks if anyone saw a mysterious girl in a nun's habit during the chaos at the palace. Lucien's playful demeanor vanishes, replaced by a look of deep contemplation as he processes her specific question. Qiyi recalls the charismatic and powerful lady who intervened, her memory of the event still hazy but vivid. The quiet hum of the cafe feels suddenly oppressive as everyone waits for the prince's response. Lucien eventually looks away, offering a sincere apology while stating that he cannot provide the answers she seeks. Eli offers a bright, supportive smile to break the tension, commending the prince for his tireless research efforts. Emi doesn't let the matter drop, her sharp gaze searching for any hint of what the future might hold. Lucien reveals that a grand ball will be held at the palace in 2 days to welcome an envoy from the rival Verbin kingdom. Qiyi's expression hardens at the mention of the Verbin envoy, recognizing them as the mysterious third party orchestrating the chaos. Emi stares ahead with iron resolve, knowing she must attend the ball to uncover the truth about her own existence. The metaphorical gears of fate begin to turn with a grinding, inevitable force that echoes through the room. A sudden, violent fracture appears in the vision of the future, signaling that a life is about to be irrevocably destroyed. Elsewhere, a young noble girl stands alone in her chambers, her back to the camera as she prepares for the upcoming event. Penny Bayard turns her head slightly, her gaze filled with a complex mix of anticipation and dread as she wonders if Emi will show her face. Night falls over the grand estate, the cold evening breeze carrying a sense of deep, unsettling melancholy. Emi sits alone on the balcony, her gaze hollow as she struggles to reconcile her modern soul with her noble body. She whispers the questions that haunt her every waking moment, desperate to find her true place in this world. Her mind drifts back to her previous life as a gloomy manhua artist, a world of digital tablets and lonely deadlines that feels like a distant dream. She reflects on the masks people wear and the futile attempts to change a destiny that seems written in stone. A wave of exhaustion washes over her, the constant drama of high society feeling more like a bothersome chore than a grand adventure. She closes her eyes against the starlight, wishing she could simply fade away from the annoying complications of her dual existence. When she looks out again, her expression is weary, the burden of 2 lives weighing heavily on her young shoulders. She concludes that every aspect of this farce-like life is nothing more than a tedious, frustrating cycle. The young lady stares up at the infinite void, feeling smaller and more helpless than ever before. Below her, vibrant red flowers bloom on the table, a stark contrast to the internal darkness she feels as she loses control of her own narrative. An ethereal hourglass manifests in her mind, showing her modern self and her villainous persona trapped in a never-ending exchange of fate. Suddenly, a piercing blue eye flashes in the darkness, cutting through her solitude with an unexpected presence. The wind whips through her silver hair as she senses someone standing right behind her. A mysterious girl with a playful smirk leans into Emi's personal space, her attire a mirror image of the villainess's own. The stranger rests her chin on her hand, watching Emi with a mischievous and knowing gaze. Emi's composure shatters instantly, her eyes wide with shock at the impossible apparition before her. She realizes with a jolt of fear that this girl has appeared out of thin air, defying all logic. The visitor finds Emi's confusion adorable, teasing her with a flirtatious tone that feels eerily familiar. Emi is caught off guard by the girl's skin and the frivolous way she speaks about such a terrifying encounter. Trembling, she manages to choke out a single question, demanding to know the identity of her double. The 2 girls stand face to face, a haunting reflection of one another under the cold light of the moon. The mysterious double remains silent for a moment, letting the weight of the revelation hang in the air. She finally speaks the truth that shatters Emi's reality. The soul known as Zhang Qinlin was never an outsider. The spirit explains that Qinlin is actually the true reincarnation of the original Emi Morwen, bound to this world across time. Emi gasps as the pieces of her fractured identity begin to merge into a singular, terrifying truth. Her mind revolts against the idea, refusing to believe that she is anything more than a creator trapped in her own creation. Desperate for answers, she lunges forward and grabs the spirit's sleeve to keep her from vanishing. She screams in frustration, accusing the ghost of playing a cruel and impossible joke on her. Emi demands to know if she was dragged back into this nightmare, just to suffer through a revenge plot she never wanted. Tears stream down her face as she mourns the life she left behind, terrified that her existence as Zhang Qinlin was just a temporary illusion. The original Emi reaches out with a gentle touch, tilting the girl's head up to force her to meet her gaze. She tells her that while the manhua was her creation, the real ending of this story has yet to be written. The vision fades, leaving Emi alone on the balcony with the command to find the truth and save herself. The scene shifts abruptly to the lavishly decorated banquet tables of the imperial palace. A massive, glittering chandelier illuminates the grand ballroom, setting the stage for the most dangerous night of Emi's life. The empire's elite mingle in their finest attire, unaware of the political powder keg waiting to explode. The herald's voice rings out across the hall, announcing the arrival of Duke Morwen and his daughter. Emi steps into the light, her expression a mask of cold refinement despite the turmoil raging in her heart. Heads turn as the nobility stares them down, their whispers filled with suspicion and judgment. She descends the grand staircase in a stunning navy ensemble, every step calculated to maintain her family's prestige. She lets out a quiet sigh, already feeling the suffocating weight of the social expectations placed upon her. A familiar voice calls out her name, causing Emi to snap her head around in surprise. Standing there is a young girl in a sharp white suit, her presence signaling a major shift in the political landscape. Penny Bayard stands tall, her youthful features hardened by the responsibility of leading her fallen house. The herald announces her new title as the acting Viscount of the Bayard estate, marking her official return to high society. Emi stands frozen in disbelief as Penny Bayard makes her dramatic entrance, her presence casting a strange, spooky energy over the gathering. Penny bursts into tears, dramatically questioning why her friend isn't weeping with joy at her miraculous survival. Duke Morwen looks on with a sharp, analytical gaze, confirming that this girl is indeed the daughter of the man who once obstructed their path. Overwhelmed by the Duke's simple acknowledgement, Penny's eyes sparkle with the hope that she has finally been accepted into Emi's inner circle. The Duke maintains his stoic composure, coolly reminding the young lady to uphold the dignity of her station despite their shared history. Whispers ripple through the shadows, questioning the wisdom of placing the capital's second district in the hands of such an unpredictable child. Fyodor can't help but imagine the former Viscount desperately pleading for his daughter's return, a scenario that feels both absurd and inevitable. A subtle, knowing smirk plays on the Duke's lips as he prepares to navigate the treacherous social waters of the evening. The atmosphere shifts instantly as Prince Lucian enters the hall, accompanied by the elegantly poised Chen Kuyi. The noble ladies in the crowd are left breathless, their faces flushed with admiration for the stunning power couple. Emi feels the pressure of the moment mounting, a cold sweat breaking out as the weight of the social expectations settles over her. Kuyi greets the Duke with a graceful bow, her words carefully measured to acknowledge his formidable reputation without revealing her own secrets. Internally, Emi is reeling, shocked by how effortlessly her friend has adopted the persona of a refined foreign noblewoman. Lucian leans in to deliver a private message, informing the Duke that the Emperor has requested an immediate audience. The prince's gaze turns icy as he warns that the Verbin envoys have arrived with a suspicious message regarding Goddess. Fyodor absorbs the intelligence with a grim expression, weighing the possibility that this new threat is nothing more than a calculated bluff. Emi's mind fixates on the mention of the goddess, wondering what role this celestial figure plays in the shifting narrative. She scans the room with wide, searching eyes, desperate to identify the unseen players moving behind the scenes. The Duke masks his rising bloodlust with a perfect, terrifying smile, a clear signal that he is ready to handle whatever the Emperor requires. Emi and Penny huddle together in a state of pure terror, completely overwhelmed by the Duke's suffocatingly dark aura. The grand ballroom glows with a deceptive warmth, hiding the cold political machinations occurring within its golden walls. As the night drags on, Emi finds herself slipping back into a state of weary boredom, the high-stakes drama starting to feel like a chore. She stands side by side with Penny, the two of them forming an unlikely duo amidst the sea of judgmental aristocrats. Despite the looming danger, the Duke offers a playful farewell, leaving the girls with a promise of protection before he departs. Lucian and Kuyi take to the floor, their dance a flawless display of grace that masks the technical alliance they've built. Ime glances toward her companion, her expression softening as she considers the girl's resilience. Penny looks up with a start, her curiosity piqued by the sudden change in Emi's demeanor. Breaking the silence, Emi asks for the truth about the day Penny vanished, wanting to understand the circumstances of her capture. Penny's eyes overflow with unbridled joy, touched that her idol would show even a flicker of concern for her well-being. She recounts her harrowing ordeal with animated gestures, explaining how hunger and magic played a role in her eventual rescue. Emi lets out a long, weary sigh, relieved to finally have the missing pieces of the puzzle fall into place. A rare, genuine smile begins to form on her lips, marking a moment of true peace in a world defined by conflict. Penny freezes in total disbelief, her breath catching at the sight of Villainess's uncharacteristic warmth. Emi's radiant expression completely disarms those around her, her beauty shining through the gloom of her reputation. The moment of tranquility is abruptly shattered when a cold, unfamiliar voice interrupts their private conversation. A mysterious figure with a pale, unsettling grin addresses Emi, his presence feeling like a sudden drop in temperature. He reveals himself as the ambassador from the Verbin Kingdom, his dark attire and ornate cross marking him as a high-ranking cleric. Emi flinches in visible horror as she senses a grotesque, malevolent spirit lurking just behind the man's polite facade. The grand ballroom echoes with the rhythmic pulse of orchestral music as the evening's festivities reach their peak. Elegant couples glide across the polished floor, their movements a synchronized display of imperial grace and high society charm. The soft rustle of silk and lace punctuates the air, adding to the sensory overload of the lavish imperial gathering. Amidst the spinning crowd, Lucian and Kui maintain a flawless dance, their professional partnership masking the strategic discussion taking place. Lucian keeps his gaze low and focused, ensuring his lips are barely moving as he relays critical intelligence to his partner. His sharp eyes dart toward a specific corner of the hall, tracking a threat that most of the oblivious guests have missed. He leans in closer to Kui, whispering a warning about the 3 o'clock position, where the real danger lurks. Tucked away in the shadows, the Verbin Kingdom's envoys stand like dark stains against the ballroom's golden light. The cloaked figures exchange hushed, urgent secrets, their presence radiating a cold and calculated malice. One of the envoys flashes a chilling, triumphant grin, clearly satisfied with how their infiltration is proceeding. Lucian's expression hardens as he notices the group splitting up, his mind already formulating a counter-strategy. Kui offers a subtle, knowing glance, signaling that she has fully grasped the gravity of the unfolding situation. With a seamless transition in their dance, they decide to divide and conquer, each taking responsibility for tracking a different target. They part ways with a polite, practiced bow, maintaining their public masks even as they dive into the shadows of espionage. The golden glow of the palace chandeliers fails to reach the dark corners where the Empire's fate is being decided. Ambassador Dasabi reveals a sinister moth tattoo on his hand, a mark that hints at the dark secrets of the Verbin diplomatic mission. He offers a deep, overly theatrical bow to Emi and Penny, his polite gestures feeling entirely hollow and predatory. Emi stares back with mounting dread, her mind racing as she tries to recall every scrap of lore about the fallen Verbin kingdom. She remembers the dark history of the old royal family, a regime defined by a cruelty that eventually led to its violent downfall. Cold realization strikes her as she remembers that in her original story, Verbin was always meant to be the ultimate antagonist. The imagery of a predatory serpent and complex magic circles flashes in her mind, representing Verbin's hidden, world-ending schemes. Their singular goal is to reclaim the absolute power they lost, regardless of the blood that must be spilled to achieve it. Emi's eyes reflect her internal panic, realizing that the final boss of her own creation is now standing right in front of her. The ambassador's face remains a mask of deceptive calm, though his eyes betray a hunger for the power Emi possesses. Stealing her resolve, Emi demands to know exactly what business a representative of Verbin has with her. The man suddenly drops to one knee in a dramatic display of reverence, shocking everyone by addressing Emi as a saintess. The surrounding staff and nobles freeze in their tracks, the scandalous declaration rippling through the room like a physical shockwave. Penny bristles with righteous fury, immediately calling out the ambassador for his blatant lies and disrespectful behavior. Emi feels the weight of the entire ballroom's judgment pressing down on her, the silence of the crowd more deafening than any shout. Sweat beads on her forehead as she realizes the impossible position this man has just forced her into. In her mind's eye, a dozen glowing red eyes stare her down, representing the predatory curiosity of the imperial elite. The sheer psychological pressure of the moment threatens to shatter her composure, leaving her vulnerable to the ambassador's trap. She visualizes the Morwen family crest as a target, knowing that one wrong word could bring her entire house to ruin. The ambassador watches her struggle with a predatory smirk, clearly enjoying the chaos he has ignited. Unexpectedly, a high-ranking noblewoman speaks up from the crowd, her face twisted in a look of pure disdain for the foreign envoy. A wave of imperial pride sweeps through the guests as they collectively condemn the ambassador for harassing a child of their empire. Emi's eyes glisten with a mix of fear and relief, her breath hitching as the social tide unexpectedly turns in her favor. Dasabi's eyes narrow into slits of annoyance, clearly frustrated that the Kapir nobility isn't as easily manipulated as he hoped. He shifts his tactics, loudly pointing out that Emi's dark attribute magic is something the Kapir Empire has historically loathed. He reaches out a grasping hand toward the girl, his shadow looming over her as he tries to claim her as Verbin's own. A high-ranking noble stands firm, his gaze fixed on the girl he refuses to abandon to a foreign power. Emi looks up in silent wonder, touched by the unexpected loyalty of the people she once feared. The noblewoman pulls the girl into a protective embrace, declaring her a true daughter of the empire. Destined scoffs at the display of unity, his hand masking a face filled with mockery and hidden malice. He reaches out with his tattooed hand, the moth symbol pulsing with a dark, predatory energy. With a sharp snap of his fingers, he begins to tear through the very fabric of reality. The grand ballroom shatters like a broken mirror, the world splintering around the terrified girl. Emi finds herself standing alone in a fractured void, the warmth of the party replaced by a chilling silence. The ambassador looms over her in this dark domain, a twisted puppet master asserting his control. She scans the empty space, realizing with a jolt of fear that she has been completely isolated from her allies. Destined explains that this is merely a glimpse of the terrifying potential hidden within her dark magic. Emi keeps her guard up, her mind racing as she tries to determine if this is a kidnapping or something far worse. She secretly activates a recording device, desperate to capture evidence of Verbin's treachery. The villain's silhouette shifts in the shadows, his presence feeling like an inescapable weight. He reaches out a veined hand, taunting her for trying to maintain a composure she doesn't truly feel. A cruel smirk plays on his lips as he mentions the Capellian bird and the mysterious protector who always intervenes. He leans in close, whispering that time itself has stopped within this realm where no one can save her. Emi's eyes widen as she realizes he's been hunting both her and the light magic user from the start. She stares him down with defiant eyes, questioning if he's truly prepared for the imperial consequences of his actions. The ambassador merely smiles, claiming that she is far too valuable a figure for them to protect. The dark domain cracks once more, the artificial reality crumbling as the ballroom begins to bleed back through. Emi gasps as she sees Penny collapsed on the floor, her body bound by jagged, dark magical thorns. Shock freezes her heart as she witnesses the physical toll the ambassador's magic has taken on her friend. Penny looks up with a trembling gaze, unable to believe the sheer madness of the man attacking her. Nearby, the noble guests stand paralyzed, their faces masks a pure, unadulterated horror. The noblewoman's voice rings out across the hall, desperately calling for the guards to seize the Verbin intruder. Emi clutches her dress, her mind reeling at the possibility that she has been lured into a deadly setup. Seeing her friend in pain triggers a wave of uncontrollable anger that drowns out her fear. Her gaze turns icy and sharp, her human emotions being overtaken by a primal, ancient instinct. Her eyes begin to glow with a haunting light, the dark power within her finally breaking its chains. She stands transformed, her hair fluttering in an unseen wind as dark energy begins to manifest around her. Destined stands his ground, the floor rumbling as he prepares to witness the awakening he's worked so hard to trigger. He declares that she is the perfect vessel, his voice barely audible over the rising roar of magical energy. Massive, intricate magic circles erupt beneath Emi, glowing with a power that threatens to consume the room. A deep, ink-black shadow spreads out from her feet, marking the birth of something truly formidable. The ambassador's face is a mask of twisted ecstasy, as he feels the sheer volume of her overflowing power. He watches with an obsessive eye, mesmerized by the beautiful and terrifying display of dark magic. Emi is enveloped in a massive, intricate magic seal as she commands the man to shut up. Her eyes burn with a deep, vengeful red, fueled by the collective weight of her sadness and hatred. The magical seal's pulse with a blinding intensity, drawing in the raw emotions of everyone in the hall. Destined laughs like a madman, reveling in the chaos as he calls for the Saintess to fully awaken. Penny screams Emi's name in a panic, terrified that the girl she loves is slipping away forever. The young lady is completely enveloped by the dark storm, her consciousness fading into the abyss of her own power. The Imperial Guards stand frozen in terror, realizing they are completely helpless against such a force. Her brother watches from the sidelines, his heart breaking as he sees the sister he tried to protect transform. Tears stream down Penny's face as she realizes that the Emi she knows might be gone for good. A guard desperately shouts for her to stop, his voice lost in the howling wind of the magical vortex. Emi stares through the chaos with hollow eyes, her humanity seemingly replaced by a cold, divine void. She raises a single hand, the magic seals tightening as she prepares to end this once and for all. Suddenly, a brilliant light cuts through the darkness as a gloved hand reaches out to intervene. Lucien appears out of nowhere, pulling Emi into his arms and shielding her eyes from the horrors of her own awakening. The weight of a past life begins to surface as Zhang Qinlin's eyes well with the bitter tears of a forgotten memory. She remembers waking up as a child, shivering and abandoned in the middle of a desolate, snow-covered street. The cold, towering cityscape of her original world looms over her, a concrete jungle where she had no home and no name. She wandered like a ghost through the bustling crowds, a small, invisible figure that nobody cared to notice. With every step, the realization sank in that she was truly alone, her gaze fixed downward as hope began to wither. A solitary streetlight flickered above, its cold glow highlighting the frozen path of a girl with nowhere left to go. Exhaustion finally claimed her, and she collapsed into the biting embrace of a snowdrift, her strength completely spent. As the frost bit into her skin, she stared into the void, wondering if her final breath would simply be buried by the falling white. Her eyes began to drift shut, ready to accept the peaceful silence of an icy end. Suddenly, a brilliant ray of warmth pierced through the darkness, pulling her back from the edge of the abyss. A couple appeared like angels in the snow, lifting her small, broken body into a world she never thought she'd see again. Desperate to survive, she reached out a trembling hand toward the first sign of kindness she had ever known. She clung to them with a death grip, refusing to let go of the miraculous warmth that saved her from the cold. They took her in, but the family portrait they created was built on the foundation of a missing daughter she was meant to replace. She clenched her skirt in a silent, nervous habit, always terrified that the illusion of her new life would shatter. Donning a pair of glasses and a polite smile, she became the perfect daughter they craved, even if it meant burying her true self. She studied their faces with an intense, desperate hunger, willing to do anything to maintain the love she had stolen. Behind her lenses, her eyes remained sharp and observant, constantly monitoring her performance as the perfect Zhang Qinlin. But the facade began to crack when a simple glass of mango juice was placed before her, a lethal test of her devotion. She drank it without hesitation, her body immediately reacting with a violent, suffocating cough as the allergic reaction set in. Clutching her throat, she struggled to maintain her composure even as the poison burned through her system. Tears of physical agony blurred her vision, yet she refused to reveal the truth that would expose her as an imposter. The mother's face paled with a sudden, horrifying realization as she asked the one question that could destroy everything. Zhang Qinlin's hand shook uncontrollably on the table, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked up in pure terror, sensing that the woman she loved was finally seeing the stranger behind the mask. The mother broke down in tears, her apologies echoing through the room as the weight of her own grief and denial overflowed. Qinlin grabbed her chest, the physical pain of the allergy nothing compared to the agony of her crumbling dream. In her mind, the chains of her false identity tightened, binding her to a destiny of lies and borrowed affection. They collapsed into a desperate embrace, two broken souls clinging to each other in a room filled with the echoes of a lost child. The mother wept into her shoulder, a sound of pure mourning for the life they were both pretending to lead. Qinlin stared into the distance, her expression cold and resolved as she decided to maintain the lie forever. Above them, the grand stained glass of a cathedral loomed, a silent witness to their pursuit of a false salvation. She saw herself divided, two versions of a girl sitting in a void where identity was nothing more than a cruel joke. The image of her face was violently crossed out, a reminder that she was merely an inferior replacement for someone else. She slumped in her seat, the crushing weight of her worthlessness making it hard to even lift her head. A single, weary eye peered through the gloom, acknowledging the dark reality she had accepted as her own. She was willing to endure the poison of 1,000 mangoes just to keep the woman she called mother happy. Her childhood was an immoral game played in the shadows of a lonely classroom, where the only prize was survival. She felt herself sinking into a dark, watery abyss, the voices of her past drowning out the light of the present. Sharp blades and tangled red threads of fate wrapped around her, threatening to slice through the fragile dream she held onto. The remnants of her old life lay scattered and forgotten, like discarded books on a dusty desk. A final glass of juice sat untouched, a symbol of the sacrifice that defined her entire existence. She reached out one last time to hold a hand that offered warmth, even if that warmth was built on a foundation of lies. The world suddenly shattered in a flash of blinding headlights, the impact of the car finally ending the tragic story of Zhang Qinlin. In a sterile hospital room, the girl wakes to find the woman who adopted her waiting by her side. The mother figure bows her head, her voice trembling as she finally acknowledges the cruel lie they've been living. Bandaged and broken, the girl stares into the distance, accepting the cold truth that she was never the daughter they truly wanted. She looks down with hollow eyes, realizing she was merely a puppet used to fill a hole in a grieving mother's heart. A look of pure shock flashes in her eyes as the woman tells her she is finally free to stop pretending. As night falls over the ward, she sits in isolation, the weight of her sudden freedom feeling heavier than any cage. From the shadows of the hallway, the hospital room looks like a lonely island where a girl's identity has completely vanished. A single tear escapes her eye, the physical manifestation of a soul that has forgotten how to exist for itself. She stares at her phone, reading a cold message from her adoptive father that offers money instead of presents. She perches on a table like a discarded doll, the vast city outside her window reflecting the emptiness in her chest. A haunting smirk touches her lips as she realizes that the love she craved was just a beautiful, suffocating lie. The towering skyscrapers pierce the sunset sky, a concrete landscape where her life feels like a meaningless speck. The evening wind whips through her hair, whispering temptations of an end that finally belongs to her. She stands precariously on the edge of the rooftop, looking down at the world that never had a place for her. She slowly settles onto the cold metal railing, her movements devoid of any fear or hesitation. Suspended o'er the urban abyss, she wonders if finding a new reason to exist is even worth the effort. She glances over her shoulder at a passing crow, envy stirring for a creature that truly knows how to fly. The birds soar freely above the maze of lights, mocking the girl who remains tethered to her own despair. Her gaze follows a falling black feather, its graceful descent mirroring the path she is tempted to take. A faint, tragic smile crosses her face as she imagines the ultimate liberation of the fall. She watches the horizon fade into dusk, the boundary between life and the void becoming blurred. With a final, weary breath, she leans forward into the empty air, ready to let gravity take the lead. She closes her eyes, welcoming the silence that promises to bury her pain forever. Suddenly, a strong hand clamps onto her wrist, yanking her back from the threshold of death. A boy with messy purple hair glares at her, his face drenched in sweat and frantic desperation. She looks up at her savior in stunned silence, unable to comprehend why someone would fight so hard for her life. The city lights flicker below them, no longer an invitation to fall, but a backdrop for a new beginning. The sky blushes with the soft colors of dawn, marking the moment her tragic drama took an unexpected turn. That fateful encounter on the rooftop wasn't just an ending. It was the birth of a new identity. Under the guidance of the artist who saved her, she pours her focus into the digital canvas of a webtoon. She works tirelessly as an assistant, using the rhythm of the pen to drown out the echoes of her past. Her life becomes a blur of deadlines and finished volumes, a strategic distraction from her internal void. Her teacher confronts her with a stern expression, demanding she start living for her own desires instead of others. She offers a quiet apology, her heart still struggling to understand what it means to be truly free. Adjusting her glasses, she prepares to step back into the role of the person everyone expects her to be. In the present, massive magic circles swirl around her, the geometric patterns pulsing with a dangerous, ancient power. Her eyes reflect the clashing worlds within her, the brown of her past life merging with the red of her current fury. The dark magic intensifies, her vision narrowing as the ballroom around her begins to dissolve. She questions the very nature of a world that forces its inhabitants to suffer through endless cycles of pain. Fragments of her memories as Emi Morwen surface, moments of fragile warmth that she is terrified to lose. She views these slivers of hope as a debt she must repay, a burden that keeps her tethered to this reality. A vision of reaching hands appears in the void, representing the connections she has forged across 2 lifetimes. She remembers the teacher's face on the rooftop, the first person who ever truly saw her. She sees herself and Eli as children, a reminder of the sibling bond she is determined to protect. Lucian's face looms in her mind, his unwavering presence a constant anchor in her chaotic storm. The faces of Penny and her allies flash before her eyes, a web of memories that refuses to let her sink. The blinding light of her awakening consumes everything, the threads of her past finally tightening. She stands as a vision of celestial power, her white hair flowing as she embraces the terrifying role of the sane Tess. She admits to herself that she is not a hero, but a woman driven by a cold, calculated sense of loyalty. Her heart breaks seeing Penny ensnared by the ambassador's dark thorns, the girl's pain fueling a new level of rage. A chilling, icy blue light flickers in her eye as she prepares to unleash a power the Empire has never seen. With a graceful, predatory movement, she adjusts her composure, her dark hair framing a face of absolute resolve. Her red eyes burn with a lethal intensity, fixed on the man who dared to harm the people she holds dear. She acknowledges that the path she is about to take is a descent into darkness, a crime against nature itself. A final image of her teacher flashes through her mind, his face a silent witness to the monster she is becoming. Eli gently cups Emi's face, his touch acting as a grounding force amidst her chaotic awakening. He looks into her trembling eyes, his voice steady as he offers to take the heavy burden of her pain upon himself. Eli stands tall, a radiant aura of light magic erupting from his form to push back the encroaching shadows. With a decisive gesture, he commands golden magic circles to manifest, signaling his intent to protect his sister at any cost. Dasabi watches with a twisted curiosity, recognizing the rare Murat power that has finally revealed its true source. The ambassador realizes primary objective is complete now that the light user's identity has been confirmed. His gaze remains sharp and calculating, his mind already spinning new webs for the Verban Empire's glory. Kenner finally lashes out, demanding the Imperial Guards seize the intruders before any more blood is spilled. Despite his loud command, a flicker of deep-seated anxiety crosses his face as he recalls a chilling warning from the past. He remembers a mysterious, cloaked envoy who once whispered of the terrifying tribute hidden within the shadows of the palace. The cold, predatory eye of that figure haunts his memories, serving as a grim precursor to the current nightmare. A gruesome vision of a red-stained cloak flashes in his mind, symbolizing the lethal cost of their imperial secrets. Kenner senses a familiar, suffocating energy beginning to bleed into the ballroom's atmosphere once again. He stands paralyzed as the dark mist swirls around him, realizing he was lured into a trap far earlier than he suspected. In the distance, he watches as Eli takes full control of the situation, seemingly several steps ahead of the chaos. The heavy boots of the Imperial Guard thunder against the floor as they move in unison to surround the threat. They draw their steel with a metallic ring, closing in on the dark-haired ambassador, who remains eerily calm. The noble guests scramble for safety, their faces masks of pure confusion as the gala descends into a battlefield. Emi's long, dark hair cascades through the air as she is lifted away from the center of the magical conflict. Eli holds her securely in his arms, his expression a shield of calm against the surrounding madness of the hall. They pass by the survivors, including a young young lady who watches the twins with wide, questioning eyes. The girl clutches her dress in a tight grip, recognizing the sheer, overwhelming scale of the power Eli is currently exerting. Eli maintains a professional focus on his magic, the light pulsing in sync with his determined heartbeat. Observers hidden in the shadows can only watch in awe as the legendary Murat power illuminates the dark hall. He stands as a beacon of hope, intentionally drawing every eye in the room toward himself and away from his sister. A sudden gust of wind howls through the open balcony doors, signaling a violent shift in the magical tide. Above them, the vast, starlit sky offers a cold, silent contrast to the heated battle occurring within the palace walls. Eli looks down at Emi, his gaze softening with a deep regret that he couldn't protect her peace tonight. He whispers a final reassurance, promising to handle the remaining danger while she takes the time to rest. With a gentle, careful touch, he prepares to send her away from the carnage for her own safety. Emi blinks weakly, her consciousness fading as she tries to process her brother's sudden, drastic actions. He carries her to the very edge of the balcony, the city lights shimmering like distant jewels far below their feet. A final, resolute glance confirms that there is no other way to ensure her escape from the Verbin trap. Ancient magic runes flare to life beneath them, forming a complex protective seal for her rapid descent. Without another word, Eli lets her go, sending her plummeting through the air within the layers of golden magic. He watches her fall, his hand still reaching out as if to catch the very air she left behind. The rush of cold air snaps Emi awake, her eyes widening in pure shock as the ground rushes up to meet her. She tumbles through the glowing circles, the weightless sensation of the fall turning her blood to ice. Her vision blurs with tears and wind, the sheer terror of the moment overriding her previous exhaustion. Just as the impact seems inevitable, two strong hands reach out from the shadows to break her fall. Chen Kui catches her with effortless grace, pulling the terrified girl into a firm, protective embrace. A confident smirk plays on her savior's lips, her presence radiating a sense of absolute security and power. Emi stares up at her in silence, stunned by the sudden appearance of the hero who has come to turn the tide. Eli watches from the balcony, his eyes fixed on the spot where Emi vanished into the dark. Emi's vision hazes as the sheer exhaustion of her awakening finally catches up to her. She slumps against Kyui's shoulder, her body trembling from the massive mana drain. Kyui peers down with a sharp, observant look, ensuring her precious cargo is still breathing. Recalling the girl's past instability, the leader quickly shifts Emi into a more secure carry. High above, Eli stands like a silent sentinel against the backdrop of the starlit palace. He focuses on the tie at his throat, mentally preparing for the confrontation awaiting inside. His expression turns frigid, the mask of a gentle brother replaced by a lethal strategist. He pulls his gloves tight, signaling the end of his patience for the Verbin games. A cold determination fills his gaze as he vows to clear every obstacle from Emi's path. He turns away from the night air, ready to face the imperial chaos with a heavy heart. Inside, the ballroom erupts in tension as the Emperor and Duke Morwen are announced. Kyui maneuvers through the dense forest, her movements silent and predatory despite the extra weight. Emi looks up at her savior, her red eyes filled with silent questions about this sudden alliance. Kyui ponders the weight of friendship, wondering if her actions are truly as selfless as they appear. She recalls the shadows she witnessed in the palace, a sight that forced her to intervene. She decides to maintain her righteous facade, keeping her complex motives buried for now. The sudden snap of a branch alerts them to a presence lurking in the thick brush. A violent surge of golden energy erupts from the trees, targeting the two girls directly. Kyui instantly deploys a geometric shield, the arcane barrier absorbing the shock of the magic. She pulls Emi into a protective embrace, her eyes scanning the dark for the hidden attackers. Emi's hand goes to her chest, sensing a familiar, suffocating malice closing in on them. From the gloom, a single, calculating eye watches their every move with lethal intent. They find their path blocked by a group of masked men standing in perfect, silent formation. The Verbin Kingdom's operatives step forward, their eyes fixed on Emi like wolves on prey. Kyui faces them with a defiant smirk, her confidence radiating through the moonlit clearing. Her eyes sharpen as she analyzes the enemy's formation, searching for a tactical opening. The assassins remain unmoved, their presence a grim testament to Verbin's reach. Kyui reaches for her hair, ready to shed the disguise that has finally outlived its use. She tosses her pink wig aside, revealing her true identity with a flourish of pure defiance. Emi stares in stunned silence, her mind struggling to process the sudden transformation. One of the hooded men freezes, momentarily rattled by the leader's bold, theatrical reveal. Kyui bristles at the mention of righteousness, her patience snapping at their hypocritical claims. Her face contorts with visible annoyance as she listens to their delusional justifications. She lashes out verbally, mocking the bastards for believing their crimes could ever be just. Emi reaches out to grab Kyui's arm, her grip firm and surprisingly steady. She steps forward with a cold, focused resolve, signaling she is done being protected. The mercenaries watch as the young girl begins to emit a chilling, resonant power. Emi gazes at them with a look of absolute calm, her red eyes burning like embers. She recalls her teacher's words, deciding that a little rebellion is exactly what she needs. A predatory smile touches her lips as she prepares to show them the true cost of their hunt. The forest stands silent under the chilling glow of a full moon. Verbin assassins surround the girls, their blades gleaming in the dark. Emi realizes the enemy is searching for the source of the light Murat power. Since it wasn't Penny or Kyui, the target is narrowing. Emi wonders if they suspect the anonymous player hidden in the shadows. She stands her ground, ready to gamble on her untapped mana. The lead assassin hesitates, unsettled by the young girl's unnatural calm. Emi lets her dark energy flare, looking like a true monster of the abyss. She points toward a tactical opening, surprising her companion. The air thrums with a sudden, overwhelming magical pressure. A silent glance passes between them, signaling the start of the gamble. Emi's red eyes burn with a lethal, terrifying intensity. The assassins tense up, sensing a massive strike is imminent. A pillar of dark mana erupts, swallowing the forest in shadows. Cold, mocking smile plays on Emi's lips. She adjusts her collar with the elegance of a predator. Terrified, the leader screams for a defensive barrier. With a sharp snap, Emi unleashes a hidden talisman. A massive explosion rocks the clearing, blinding the enemy. The assassins cuff through the thick haze, searching for targets. They struggle to see, their formation completely shattered. When the smoke clears, the crater is empty and the girls are gone. The lead assassin growls in fury, realizing they were tricked. Qiyi bursts into laughter as they sprint through the woods. She finds the successful bluff absolutely hilarious. Emi stumbles, her body struggling with the mana surge. Qiyi continues to boast, hiding their true vulnerability. Emi's eyes dart around, knowing the pursuit is close. They approach a steep drop that looks like a dead end. Qiyi clasps her hands, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Emi's face pales as she realizes the plan. They plunge into the open air, soaring under the stars. The mental strain finally pushes Emi to her limit. They hit the ground safely, the shortcut proving effective. The towering spires of the Morwen estate appear ahead. They reach the iron gates, breathless but alive. A familiar figure stands waiting in the shadows. Diane bows low, welcoming the young lady back. His gaze turns razor-sharp as he delivers a cold insult. Emi and Toyi exchange a look of pure confusion as the butler's insults hang in the air. The shadows suddenly erupt as masked verban assassins lunge from the foliage. Emi freezes, her crimson eyes widening as the threat closes in. Qiyi's gaze sharpens, realizing their escape route has been compromised. A reaching hand threatens to snatch the girls from the safety of the path. Qiyi braces herself, shielding the exhausted Emi from the incoming strike. Diane steps forward with terrifying poise, blocking the path of the intruders. He adjusts his monocle, dismissing the elite assassins as mere, annoying flies. With a casual flick of his finger, a concentrated spark of mana ignites. A blinding surge of electricity incinerates the attackers before they can even scream. The girls watch in stunned silence as the battlefield is cleared in an instant. Nothing remains of the verban squad but a few scattered piles of gray dust. The adrenaline fades, leaving Emi swaying on her feet from the mana backlash. Her vision blurs as she finally collapses, her strength completely spent. Diane's cold expression doesn't waver as he tracks her fall. Qiyi catches her friend just in time, relief washing over her face. The butler demands the girl be handed over, his tone leaving no room for argument. A second wave of reinforcements descends from the trees surrounding the group. Qiyi readies her talismans, prepared to hold the line while Emi is moved. A blur of motion streaks past her, moving faster than the eye can follow. Blue flashes of steel tear through the air, dismantling the enemy formation instantly. Kenner lands with lethal grace, her maid uniform fluttering in the moonlight. Her eyes burn with a murderous intent for anyone daring to touch her lady. Seeing the threat neutralized, Qiyi tucks her charms away with a sigh. Diane takes Emi into his arms, his touch surprisingly careful given his harsh words. He weaves a complex golden seal around her head to stabilize her fluctuating power. Dark mana recedes as the seal takes hold, soothing her internal turmoil. The transformation completes, her hair fading back to a snowy, porcelain white. Diane walks away from the carnage, leaving Kenner to dispose of the remaining trash. Qiyi watches them go, questioning if a mere butler could truly possess such sealing magic. He gazes down at the sleeping girl, his words a chilling promise of eternal confinement. The moon hangs high above the estate, witnessing the dark secrets within. Back at the gala, the Empress scolds the verban guests for ruining the evening. She demands to know if their gift is actually a declaration of war. A suffocating silence falls over the ballroom as the two powers clash. The Emperor maintains a facade of calm, though his eyes remain icy. The ambassador offers a shallow apology, hiding his true malice beneath a hood. He reaches for a silk-covered item, promising a gift that will change everything. Ele feels a sudden chill, his instincts screaming that a trap is about to spring. He narrows his eyes, focusing on the mysterious relic the ambassador holds. A sinister grin spreads across the envoy's face as he prepares the reveal. He mentions the remnants of Princess Liliana, a name that strikes fear into the Empire. To truly grasp the weight of Liliana's sacrifice, we must travel back 13 years into the Empire's bloodiest chapter. In a desperate bid for dominance, the Verban Kingdom invoked the forbidden power of a twisted deity to unleash a global plague. This cursed disease acted as the opening move in a high-stakes game of war that set both nations ablaze. Leading the charge was the young Duke Morwen, a peerless commander who spearheaded the imperial elites at the front lines. Meanwhile, the newly crowned Emperor Reynold remained at the capital, pouring his strength into maintaining the nation's protective barrier. It was Princess Liliana, the most powerful Yumeng of her era, who stood as the final line of defense against the encroaching rot. The battlefield became a chaotic swirl of dark magic and desperation where faith was pitted against absolute madness. On the eve of the final confrontation, the silent halls of the cathedral held the weight of an impending tragedy. Liliana kneels before the altar, her prayers interrupted by the heavy footsteps of her brother. Reynold's voice cracks with frustration as he accuses her of risking everything, just because Duke Morwen was wounded in battle. She looks back with eyes full of sorrow, knowing that if the Duke falls, the entire Empire's morale will crumble with him. him. The Emperor stares at his sister, his face a mask of cold, regal duty struggling against his internal grief. He pleads with her to reconsider, reminding her that she is the only family he has left in this world. A single tear escapes Liliana's gaze as she accepts the heavy burden of her divine lineage. She stands tall, her resolve hardening even as the weight of her choice threatens to crush her spirit. She explains that the Kapir dynasty must be more than just a sword. It must be the wings that shield its people. Glowing with a celestial radiance, she declares that it is her sacred duty as Yumeng to purge the world of this spreading evil. Reynold shouts in desperation, questioning why she must be the one to serve as the ultimate sacrifice. Her expression remains unshakable as she softly begs him not to stand in the way of her mission. With a bittersweet smile, she says her final goodbyes, the light of the morning sun reflecting in her tearful eyes. The palace corridors echo with the silence of her departure, marking the end of her life as a mere princess. She leaves behind her most precious treasures, 2 sleeping infants who have no idea their world is about to change. These children, the next generation's hope, represent her final prayer for a future free from the shadow of the gods. On the actual field of slaughter, a soldier's grip tightens on their blade amidst the tattered remains of the imperial flag. A red-haired knight gasps for air, her armor battered and stained after facing endless waves of regenerative monsters. She scans the ruins of the battlefield, realizing that their current strength is reaching its absolute breaking point. Suddenly, a lethal projectile whistles through the air, aimed directly at her exposed flank. A flash of silver intervenes as a masterfully wielded sword parries the attack with a resonant metallic ring. The knight stares up in awe at Duke Morwen, his presence a beacon of hope amidst the carnage. The Duke stands firm, ancient magic circles flaring to life behind him as he prepares to unleash his full power. His eyes burn with a cold intensity as he commands her to stay focused and beware of the enemy's cursed weaponry. Reinvigorated by his presence, she offers a sharp salute and prepares to rejoin the fray. A deafening, crystalline snap echoes across the sky, halting every soldier in their tracks. The knight looks up in horror, sensing a shift in the atmosphere that feels fundamentally wrong. Reality itself begins to fracture, a jagged black rift tearing through the clouds like a mortal wound. Within the void, dozens of crimson, lidless eyes begin to peer down at the realm with ancient malice. The barrier between worlds shatters completely, revealing the glitching, terrifying form of the Verbin deity. The god finally opens its eyes, casting a gaze of absolute destruction upon the battlefield below. The red-haired knight gazes upward, her voice trembling as she questions the nature of the nightmare manifesting before her. Towering over the ruins, the Verbin god appears as a horrific, multi-eyed entity that mocks the very concept of divinity. Fyodor wipes the blood from his brow, his voice booming with the authority of a commander who refuses to break. He locks eyes with his battered soldiers, demanding they hold the line until the promised reinforcements finally arrive. Yet, against the overwhelming aura of a celestial being, human steel and courage seem utterly insignificant. With a single, agonizing shriek, the deity unleashes a wave of annihilation that sweeps every living creature from the field. In a heartbeat, the entire horizon is stained a visceral, sickly crimson as the world succumbs to the slaughter. The air grows heavy with the scent of iron, the desperate gasps of the dying drowned out by the ecstatic laughter of the Verbin cultists. The once grand pillars of the capital now stand as silent tombstones amidst a landscape of bone and ash. The lone knight stumbles through the carnage, her breath hitching as she realizes she is one of the few souls left standing. Her vision narrows, focusing on the impossible task of surviving a war against the heavens themselves. Through the haze of death, Duke Morwen emerges, the only warrior possessing the sheer mana required to challenge a god. He stands defiant amidst the flowing rivers of blood, acting as a solitary shield protecting the heart of the empire. Fyodor clutches his temple, the mental strain of the conflict threatening to shatter his iron resolve. His eyes burn with a lethal intensity, fueled by a mixture of sheer exhaustion and an unyielding sense of duty. He stares down the glitching horror, silently vowing that he will not fall until he sees Liliana one last time. His fingers tighten around the hilt of his blade, channeling every ounce of his remaining strength into his weapon. Nearby, the red-haired knight collapses, her strength finally failing as she reaches out for a miracle. She looks up with fading hope, her spirit crushed by the realization of her own helplessness. Her hand scrapes against the cold, blood-soaked earth, a final gesture of defiance before the darkness takes her. A faint, phantom voice echoes in her mind, urging her to find the strength to grasp her sword once more. Even as consciousness slips away, a desperate prayer rises to ensure the darkness never swallows Kapur's skies again. Crimson droplets patter against the dirt, marking the steady rhythm of a life force nearing its end. Fyodor bows his head in a moment of silent grief, his knuckles white as he prepares for his final stand. 3 hooded figures emerge from the gloom, their voices dripping with arrogance as they mock his futile struggle. The Duke's expression remains cold and unreadable, his focus sharpening on the cowards hiding behind their deity. A sharp, predatory smirk plays on his lips, signaling that he still has one final card left to play. He taunts the assassins, calling them out for using a child as a vessel for their twisted, malevolent god. The lead envoy bristles with rage, unaware of the celestial feathers beginning to drift through the stagnant air. A soft rustle heralds a change in the atmosphere, the oppressive weight of the god's presence suddenly lifting. Fyodor stands before a massive, intricate magic seal, declaring that he was never truly fighting this war alone. Princess Liliana descends from the heavens in a burst of holy light, her 6 wings unfurling with divine majesty. The Duke watches her arrival with a wary smile, knowing the tide of battle has finally irrevocably turned. The Verban operatives recoil in terror, their confidence shattered by the overwhelming radiance of the true Yumeng. Liliana gazes down with eyes full of celestial power, ready to purge the corruption from her land. The moth-winged deity looks on with a hollow expression as the princess prepares to end the nightmare once and for all. With Liliana's intervention, the battlefield is instantly transformed, the dark energy of the plague dissipating into the wind. The light restores a sense of peace to the shattered capital, marking the beginning of a long and bitter stalemate. But victory comes at a terrible price as the princess vanishes into the mists of history, leaving her family behind. Fyodor stands as a solitary figure against the freezing rain, the weight of his grief finally eclipsing the scars of the battlefield. Years later, he holds a young Emi close, his only connection to the woman he loved and lost. He carries the burden of a father's loneliness, his every action dedicated to protecting the legacy Liliana left behind. Back in the present, Fyodor's eyes widen in sheer horror as a long-buried memory resurfaces. The ambassador steps forward, presenting the sinister relic as if it were a common trophy of war. Within the glass sphere sits a single, preserved eye, a chilling, undeniable remnant of the missing princess. The ballroom freezes in a collective gasp of shock at the sight of Liliana's stolen, sapphire gaze. The sapphire eye stares back from its ornate, golden cage, a gruesome trophy of a fallen princess. The Verban ambassador wears a sickeningly smug expression, reveling in the psychological torment he's inflicting on the imperial court. Lethal shards of ice materialize in the air, a physical manifestation of the Duke's explosive, cold-blooded rage. Fyodor's eyes burn a demonic crimson as he activates a high-level magic circle, ready to erase the envoy from existence. Lucian watches the unfolding chaos with gritted teeth, realizing that a single wrong move here will ignite a total war. Eli exhales a weary sigh, stepping past his father to de-escalate the situation before the ballroom turned to a slaughterhouse. The young heir stands firm before the kneeling diplomat, his small stature belied by an aura of icy authority. Ele's gaze softens with a hidden grief, his focus locked entirely on the last remaining piece of his mother. He narrows his eyes, examining the relic with a clinical intensity that masks the storm of emotions swirling underneath. The ambassador raises the tray with mock reverence, inviting the boy to take the sincere gift from his kingdom. As Eli reaches out, a faint, ethereal chain begins to manifest around his fingertips, reacting to the relic's presence. The moment his skin makes contact with the glass, a surge of ancient energy ripples through the room, confirming a powerful bloodline connection. A dark, triumphant smirk crosses the envoy's face as he witnesses the magical resonance he was desperately hoping for. The ambassador's expression drips with malice, celebrating the discovery of a new Yumeng that must be eliminated. Far away from the political intrigue, the afternoon sunlight filters through a window where a soft, melodic humming fills the air. The sterile environment of a modern hospital ward stands in stark contrast to the high fantasy world of the Empire. A mysterious girl in striped pajamas sits on her bed, her attention fully absorbed by the digital story she's reading. Tears well up in her visible eye as she processes the tragic fate of the characters within the pages. She closes the device with a heavy heart, unable to accept such a devastating and unfair conclusion to the tale. Another patient lies nearby in a deep sleep, their pale features suggesting a long-term struggle with a difficult illness. The girl with the eye patch looks directly toward us, promising to give the story one last chance for a truly satisfying ending.